Good morning. I'm Pete Leiser with Max Fire Apparatus. I guess the guy who ran the project for your Timberwolf. To my right is Brandon Homer, who is not only Chief of Element Fire Protection, is also probably one of the best EVTs in the state, if not. So on the technical side and out by the truck and a lot of the maintenance issues and different things like that he'll be working on. Floyd Baconson over here, president of Max Fire. Been doing this a long time and is very, very, very familiar with the Timberwolf application, and will be here to help show you guys all the operation of that truck, answer any questions, and go over and make you guys feel comfortable. Basically this morning, kind of starting this thing out with a kind of a high-level PowerPoint type of thing, kind of going over basics of this truck. There might be some newer items on this truck that you guys are not familiar with your current apparatus, and just want to make sure to cover that, and so you're aware of those things. This is basically an open forum. If you have questions, feel free to stop and ask clarifications or interjections or wherever else. I know these guys are going to interject as I talk through this thing, but you guys are welcome to. So, but I guess I want to start by thanking you guys for choosing to go with us and working through this. I know it took a little longer than we anticipated, but that truck's finally here. So there you go. All right. So basically, kind of a brief overview of what you do have on this apparatus. It is a 2021 Freightliner 108 SD four-wheel drive crew cab chassis.
2022, I believe, isn't it? Yeah, the paperwork says 22.
Is it 22?
That's what the paperwork says. Yeah.
It might be because it.
Yeah, I think
Maybe
maybe
some-
Model year, because it
changed.
showed up in October, November, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cummins 400 horsepower, 9-liter engine. You do have an Allison 3000 transmission on this thing. There is a Cummins engine, internal engine brake, a variable geometry turbocharger. There is a switch on the dash. We'll talk about that. Electronic stability control, or I think Freightliner calls it enhanced stability control, which is a automated system on board that actually kind of helps you keep that vehicle upright. And we'll go over talking about a little bit of that. I'm sure most of you have that on your cars right now. They did set this truck up as a kind of a clean cab with the H.O. Bostrom vinyl seats in there. You don't have any SCBAs in your cab. All of that is in the body, trying to, that's kind of another nationwide trend to try to keep a lot of the harmful stuff that gets on your bunker gear and SCBAs out of the cab. A Kurzweil charger, but this charger is actually a 1500 watt inverter as well, giving you AC power inside the cab and inside the body. We'll go over that a little bit. The emission package, I think you guys are familiar with diesel particulate filters, at least on your Fords. This one now has the added SCR system, which we will talk more specifically about on what that system is, what it does, and kind of some do's and don'ts regarding the emissions controls on these new trucks. Rosenbauer EXT body. This is a fully extruded aluminum body. You'll notice that everything is, you have all your shelving tracks are integrated in the sidewalls. You've got beams that go clear across the side from side to side of your body, so you've got a very heavy duty body for this off-road wildland application. 4-stage Rosenbauer NH55 fire pump. It's actually a 1500 GPM fire pump, but rated at 1000 GPM for your guys' elevation. But you do have the full-size NH pump, which allows you to be able to flow both normal pressure and high pressure at the same time. And we'll talk about, you'll have specific high pressure discharges and your normal pressure discharges, which you guys are, majority of those you are running compressed air foam. The pump is controlled by a Rosenbauer LCS 2.0 logic control system. It's a system that has been used on this fire pump for many, many years over in Europe and on all these new Timberwolves. So it's something that's been around for a while. I think you guys might be I think you're the first asked for it, but you actually got the text labels instead of the universal symbols on your LCS control. I think you're the first asked for it, but the West Rye has it too. So
We have
those
two
are the-
comments from other departments that said we should have done the same.
Yeah, and actually the one in for Sweetwater, Wyoming went to the text because of your guys' truck. Got to see that out of the plant. So inside you do have a TFT Tornado remote control bumper turn monitor. It is a selectable gallonage nozzle, and we will look at that while we're out at the truck and also go through operation and questions on that. That is a high pressure bumper monitor with capabilities of high pressure foam. 750 gallons of water. You've got an automatic pump primer on there. We talked about the water. You've got your calf system is a Watrous UMax 200, basically 200 CFM compressor on board for your compressed air foam. The lighting package, you've got a FireTech high-vis LED lighting package. So each one of those scene lights that you have on the body on the left, right, and rear are 10,000 lumens a piece. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to play with those at night, but they should light up your area pretty good. There's also a front brow light that also activates as a spot flood in the scene as well. And then, a Whalen emergency LED warning package. And then you guys did get a power-operated aluminum hose bed. It's kind of a high level. So, kind of one of the first things, your dash. There's going to be probably some new things new lights, indicators that you haven't seen before, or that is not in your current trucks. Basically, the biggest one is probably going to be underneath your fuel gauge. You're going to have a diesel exhaust fluid bar graph and tank level there, with also a diesel exhaust fluid symbol that we'll talk about after a while. To the left over here, right above your RPM gauge, there's an exhaust plume with a thermometer in it, which is called they call that a Hess light, meaning high exhaust system temperatures. And we'll go over that when we get into more of the emission side, but that light you'll probably see when you work this truck and get it hot and get it working, you'll see that light come on probably more than any of the other lights regarding the emissions control systems. The symbol to the right, the exhaust plume with the two bars, I think you guys are probably familiar with that as your diesel particulate filter status light. Another thing that's probably going to be new, if you look inside your RPM gauge, you've got two yellow engines. The one on the right is your check engine light, which basically has been around forever. The newer one is just a solid yellow engine. And that one is specific to any type of emissions related faults. So they call that, it's called an MIL light. But when that comes on, it is just related to your emission side, not everything else. It's different than your check engine light. Another one, ABS. Granted, I'm sure most of you have ABS in your cars. You know what that is. The one on your fire truck, and this one, new one, in your speedometer on the lower right, you've got a truck with little squiggly lines. That is basically your electronic stability control light. That when that comes on, meaning you've had basically a stability control event. That system has become active. because of maybe a emergency maneuver, emergency stop, sliding, any type of lateral movement, or risk of rollover, something like that.
Is the ABS for all six, I mean, for both all drivetrain and?
Yes.
Yeah, and for the DSC?
Yes. Yep. And you, along with the we'll talk a little bit more about, but you also have automatic traction control also as part of that system. So there's a lot of things going on where actually, if it detects a spin or lack of traction, it actually, an automated system actually applies brakes to the wheels and actually transfers power to the wheel that does have traction. So you do have a lot of automated systems on here to help you be safe, but it does not replace being responsible and driving this thing safely. You've got,
So to that point, what are the things that you feel, what are the indicators where you would say shut the engine down immediately on that gauge?
You get a stop engine light?
Yeah. You get the red stop engine light or the check engine light. The check engine light, there's probably could be anything from low coolant to a sensor failure. Check engine light's more of a warning. If you get the stop engine light, you have something that has really gone wrong. That's when you need to start thinking about finding something else to do the job you're doing. Because of it being a fire truck, these trucks will melt down before they stop. There's no safety parameters. It will not shut down. It will not go into limp mode. It will not do anything until it completely dies. So if you get a stop engine light, you need to start thinking really quick about swapping out that truck.
Yeah, that's why I have to. Okay.
Like out of oil would be a good example of that.
Lost full pressure, you're gonna get a stop engine light immediately.
But it will continue to run until it seizes up.
So it becomes one piece of iron.
Listen, it will eat itself. So pretty much, those are a lot of the new things that I think you'll see on that, on your dash. One big thing that I don't have a video of this, but actually starting this truck, there is a process to it. Many of you might have some older cars that you can just get in and turn the key and go. These new fire trucks, at least on the body side, there's 8 computers on this thing?
Yeah.
And on the engine side, on the chassis side, there's, I don't know how many. But basically, it's a big computer. Everything on here is electronic. So you'll notice as you get into this truck, after you switch on your master power, you walk in, that master power is right by your door frame rail right there. You turn that on and you climb into that truck. Then you've got your ignition switch, which is just it's a little metal tab. There's no key, there's no nothing. But what I'm trying to say is you need to be patient as you're getting into and you're starting this truck. So as you're getting in, turning on that master power switch, climbing in, taking a seat, turning that little metal tab over one click, and you'll notice your dash lights and all your gauges cycle through and everything comes up. And it's important to watch that and let it do its thing and let it completely go through, basically rebooting, like you're rebooting your computer, your phone, anything else electrical that you're carrying around. Be patient and not automatically just start cranking that baby. Because if you just automatically get in there and fire that thing up without letting that computer reboot, the chances of you creating a fault code or an error greatly increases.
So are there beeps, or is there a cage or lights or anything that's indicating the cycle through?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and we could probably see it once we get to the truck.
I told him so far to wait until the intake heater light goes off.
Yes.
Yes, that's a good indicator. And I mean, if it's warm and you shut it off, the intake heater is not going to come on. but you should still let it do a cycle. You'll hear it do a couple clicks, you'll hear it running the gauges, all the lights come on, they go off, and then one or two of them will come back on. It's very important that you do let that truck go through its self-check. And what it's doing is it's taking all that information and it's sending it back and forth to all the computers and saying, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. If you interrupt that system too many times, you can be driving down the road and it goes, oh shit, we lost the ABS, and it's just going to go ABS fault, and it may lock it into third gear of the transmission, and that's where it's stuck. So it's just depending on how many times you do it, and then what system checked in and what system didn't check in. So it's very important to let it go ahead and do a self-check before you start it.
Roger.
Same with coming out of the truck. Those computers, just like your little desktop at home, they want to shut down. If you just unplug it while it's running, you might create problems. You might ultimately cause a failure. It's no different when you're shutting off that truck. Don't use the master switch to shut off the truck.
Right.
Because that just takes power away from everything while it's still doing the job. When you use the ignition switch tells the truck to shut down and shuts down the computers. So, starting it, master, ignition, cycle, let it do its fault checks, then crank to start. And when you're stopping, use the ignition switch to stop the truck. And then as you get out of the truck, turn off the master power.
Right.
So, but it is important to remain patient as you get in, because I know you're probably amped up when you get that call and you get to jump in that truck. But just please, you still got to think. And let the truck do its thing before taking off. Anything more on the gauge panel, dash, anything?
I remind people, and tell me if I'm wrong, to not wait too long until after the intake heater light goes off. The same with glow plugs, right?
I'm sorry?
So, like on the Fords that we have, you wait till the glow light or glow plug light goes off, and you start the truck. You don't wait a minute afterwards. You start it right after it goes off.
It's not going to hurt it, but I mean, you can.
I think to Chief's point is once that light goes off, it quits supplying power to the glow plug
Right.
or the air intake heater. So then if you let whatever's been heated up to allow the combustion to happen, if you let it cool back off, it's going to be more difficult to start. So you
I'm
need
hitting
that
from
cycle again.
all the diesel, and I'm just
Yeah.
trying to see if it's different now. Yeah, we don't wait too long after. We just, it goes off and we start the truck.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and this, this self-check and cycle isn't minutes. I mean, you're talking
Yeah.
10 seconds,
Yeah. 10 to 15 seconds.
10 to 15, something like that. So it isn't like you're having to sit there and wait and, watch. I mean, you can be getting yourself buckled up. You'll develop a process on how to do it, but you gotta, that's what I'm trying to say. But it isn't, I'm making a big deal about it because I don't want to get the call that we're having all these faults and, all the kind of stuff. It's just gonna help you. I mean, that's it.
And it's certainly not our responsibility to establish your SOPs. That's your own responsibility internally. However, there are things that are acceptable practices associated with pre-staging. So you can, after you've used your ignition switch to kill the truck and you've turned off master power, you can reach back in and turn that ignition switch back to the run position. That way, when you're coming out there and you're getting ready to put your bunker on, you turn on your master, it's got the master on, the ignition switch is already in the run position, everything's going to start and it's going to go through its test sequence and everything. When you do get in the truck at that point in time, you can just hit the starter switch and go. So, as long as you've not used it to turn the truck off, you can pre-stage ignition back on after you turn off the master power.
So, in the event that we do get a fault code one day, and like for instance that ASB example you get, how hard is that? Is that like you take it to the shop and they plug in the computer and they clear the fault? Is it that simple? Or
To store the fault, the easiest thing to do is find a safe place, pull over, shut the truck completely off, wait 10, 15 seconds, master switch, ignition, let it do its cycle, then start it back up, and it will take off. The problem is, like I said, if it doesn't recognize that one of the systems there, it will accept it for a while. Sooner or later, it's going to go, it's just not there, and it's going to set a fault.
Gotcha.
And it just depends on what system doesn't check in of what the repercussions are gonna be.
Would you recommend that we take a scanner with us when we go on dispatch? Okay.
No, it's just as easy to, like I said, if you have a fault, it's gonna store the fault. If you cycle it off and start it up, it'll usually
Right.
go back, and once it knows everything's there, it'll take over into itself. Because even if you take a scanner, if you have a problem with the exhaust system or one of the sensors, unless you have $4,000 or $5,000 worth of sensors in your pocket, you're not gonna fix the problem.
Well, I think the point of having the scanner is to decide if it's something we can deal with later
Yeah.
or something we need to go out of service and deal with now.
If it's a check engine light, you can probably wait a little while. If it's a stop engine light, you're gonna have to get it taken care of
And
regardless.
it's coming on dispatches when we take the truck out for 2 weeks.
Yep,
you know,
and
so-
even if it's a check engine light, you can probably run the truck for a while. Until it turns to a stop engine light, it's a warning saying there is a problem, but it's not creating a huge problem.
I mean, on the check engine light, I would just check the fluids, that I'm not losing anything.
That would be a good place to start.
And then keep going. Right?
Yeah, because the problem I've run into is people called and said, hey, we got this check engine light, we can't get it to go away. Okay, and I go down, pop the hood, put a half a gallon of coolant in it, the light goes up, and I go, there you go,
Yeah.
have a nice day. You know?
That's mine with my own cars. Check the fluids, and if it stays on, there's something that, you know, and the oil pressure is good, then just keep going.
Yeah,
Does it have an OBD2 interface?
no,
No.
it's a 9-pin.
Of course it is. It's nothing that we have over.
Yeah.
Okay. Your center dash panel, a lot of basically your driver, a lot of driver controls are located there. Your Allison automatic transmission, power windows, and you do have a camera system with that monitor that you've got both driver, officer, rear cameras, and then you also have a forward-facing camera, which actually has a manual switch to activate it. Your driver's reverse and officer side cameras will come on automatically with the turn signals or shifting the transmission into reverse.
With the microphone,
Can you see the front mounted tire from the engineer's seat?
It's not there anymore.
And does the front camera show the cage in the front? The platform?
The bumper?
Well, yeah, it looks like a platform to me.
I think it's pretty close.
Yeah.
I mean, when we Chief had it, we had it basically angled, so it looks right in front of you.
Okay,
So you can have that on while you're driving.
yeah,
That's the whole point of it,
yeah,
to give you a better reference of where
that is.
your bumper is in relation to that tree or
Right.
the car parked right there. So yes.
One of the subtleties with that is that if you've manually selected the front, it won't switch to the rear when you put the transmission in reverse. In order to see behind you backing up, you have to deselect the front camera.
Yeah. Oh, wow. But then if you have deselected it, you can toggle between all the different cameras, and there's a screen where you can show all four.
Yeah, there's a screen, there's a button on the monitor
Yeah.
where you can see all of them at the same time.
But if you manually selected the front camera, that's what you're getting.
Yeah.
The manual.
That's the thing, so if you can't, if you're not seeing the
that
other ones.
that front camera, that
Yeah.
switch, it overrides everything.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah, fine, but good to know.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, if you want your reverse, you want your drivers, take off off your front camera. So, and I guess I suspect you use the front camera when you're maneuvering kind of slowly in tight areas. I think that's more the reason for having that camera out there.
Or four-wheeler.
Okay. Yeah. To see where that rock is that you're just gonna go, okay.
Or whether there's a tree. Yeah, certainly coming over a hill, it's nice to see what you're gonna drive over before you hit it.
Yes.
which is the point of the front camera.
Going off, and then you can see the turret. So without the camera, you would only see the position of the turret on the inside of this little weird lids indicator. Can't really tell. So that's really helpful to push that camera. And
Yeah,
see.
I mean, that TFT, I mean, the indicator is to give you, position where that nozzle tip is pointed. It will take time to get used to and play with it. And you can also see that where you're positioned at, if you're flowing water, you're gonna see where that stream is. Or you can have the front camera on and do it that way. But so you have a number of ways to use that front bumper turret and know where you're pointed at. This picture didn't turn out the best, but some of the bigger functions here, you do have your high and low range select button, which is right in basically the third switch over on the right, to the right of that trail valve for your park brake. The low range end of it, shifting into that, you need it be in neutral. You can select the low range. Specifically,
Actually, you even have to have the park brake
Yeah,
set.
I think you did park brake set, so to get in low range.
Neutral, park brake, make the shift, then it will go into low range. You'll hear it and it'll light a flash, and don't move until the light quits flashing.
Because it's changing at that point.
And ideally using that is when you are pump and rolling on high pressure side, it does allow you it gives you more pressure on the high pressure side at a slower speed.
Here's a pointer if you want to use that to point.
Oh, you don't like my finger?
Well, it would be helpful if you could point.
Is there any way to use the cursor on your computer for pointing at the specific switches? I mean, is that an option or no?
Yeah.
I mean, just so we can see which one you're talking about when you're talking about it.
That one.
Okay, that one.
Thank you.
So it goes away, but yeah, so at least the way we're gonna show you is do pump and roll, you're in low range, and it allows you to build up a lot more pressure at slower speeds. And I think where were we at, 250 PSI,
Yeah, doing like 2 miles an
going
hour.
like 2 miles an hour down the road, and I don't know where we're at gallonage wise on that nozzle, but we were spraying that nozzle 90 degrees about 70 feet.
Oh, wow.
So you do, even when it is high pressure and you've got, at the max, it's 100 gallons a minute at 600 PSI, you have a lot of reach with that front bumper monitor. Going in a straight stream. So, and that's just at 250 PSI. So, let's see, another.
There's one that doesn't work, that's the spotlight. I turn it on, I don't see what's supposed to turn on. I think it's the second switch to the left.
Yeah, I noticed that. I don't think there was
The light comes on the switch.
on the switch, but there's no
There's
spot.
no actual spot. Yeah.
I've never even seen that switch.
Which one?
The second to the left.
This one,
I think, or is it that one? Okay.
spot lamp.
Spotlight, yeah.
I think it was an option, it wasn't there.
Could
No,
be
it
the
was in
one
the- it was in
actually
the specs, though.
under the hood.
You've got
No,
Because
there's a manual switch on the
On the
lights
light.
underneath the hood.
I didn't find that. Couldn't tell where the switch was.
We'll take a look at it when we get
Yeah.
Another one is that's your four-wheel drive. Again, being neutral.
That one doesn't care. Let's be clear about that.
Okay.
You can take that front axle in and out at any point in time.
As long as the rear wheels are not spinning.
Yeah. They can be driving,
Yes.
but not an ATC event or ABS event.
So for high-low, parking brake and neutral,
Yep.
and for four-wheel drive,
Just do it on
you can just under 20 miles an hour or whatever.
Well, as long as you're moving and the rear axle and the front axle are going at the same speed, you can engage it and disengage it at any time.
Okay.
But if you're like trying to go up a hill and the front axle's not moving and the rear axle's spinning and you make that four-wheel drive shift, you'll know when it engages.
Yeah. So
Because
in
it's
that,
gonna make a bang.
in that moment, what do you recommend?
Stop all movement, put it into four-wheel drive, then go.
Okay.
If the rear wheels are spinning, stop, hit the four-wheel drive, then continue.
Then you can leave it in drive, you just stop.
Yep.
It's all about the wheel movement.
It is about the wheel movement.
Hey guys, let's just make a general policy, let's just always stop.
Yeah.
It's easier to remember than too many details.
And the truck will tell you as well, like in particular for the range, for a range shift, if you're asking to do a range shift when you have not met all the interlocks, it's gonna beep at you. It's gonna become beep, 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 and that's telling you, hey, I know you've asked for low range, but I can't shift because you haven't made all the rules. So at that point in time, that's your reminder to, hey, shift to neutral, set your park brake, shift back into high, then shift to low, and it'll
And
not
then
beep.
do a stick.
Yeah, it'll make it shift.
The four-wheel drive just engages the front axle.
Correct.
It does not lock any differentials or.
Correct. That's the other switch over there. This lock, unlock. This one, that's your differential lock.
Ah, that's the door.
That's door locks.
Doors.
I don't believe there is a diff lock on this.
And so, can you do, so when do you, like low range would basically gives you what I think of as a granny gear range, right? And that would be good for like pump and roll and would it also be good for like driving down steep hills to sort of just like kind of put more of a mechanical brake on?
Yes.
And then, so four-wheel drive would be obviously more for, climbing steep hills and that sort of thing. But could you use them both at the same time for like an extreme situation, or would you not do that?
You can.
You could.
You can go forward or low.
So it'd be basically four-wheel drive low, essentially.
Correct.
And would there be a sequence, if you wanted to go to four-wheel drive low for like an extreme situation, would you go to low range first and then four range, or would it even matter?
It doesn't matter, you're still gonna have to stop, set the park brake to hit low range. So you can stop, hit the park brake, go into four low, or into low range, and then hit the four-wheel drive at the same time, and it'll make all those shifts.
So do you have to hit the park brake every time you go into low range?
Yes, you do.
Oh, really?
You have to be in neutral, park brake, and then it will make the low range shift.
And why is that? Why do you?
It's a safety parameter, so you don't make things go kaboom.
Gotcha. So if you try to go to low range drive,
It will just beep, like Floyd was saying. It will beep and beep and beep until you realize that it's not gonna go. Then
Okay.
you have to hit neutral, park brake, go back to high range, then shift it into low range, and it will reset the system.
Understood. Okay. Yeah. Got it.
Let's see, engine brake. And it's basically on or off. There is no low, medium, or high.
You recommend that the engine brake is always on, right?
Except
Because it just turns off when you accelerate it anyway.
except in slick conditions.
Okay.
If you've got icy or snowpacked roads, definitely I would take that off because you're sideways before that system has a chance to. ABS will kick it back out, but you'll already be going sideways before it does.
Okay.
So it's on all the time, is it only engaging when you're on the brake?
Zero throttle.
No,
Oh, you
Zero
take
throttle.
take the throttle away.
As soon as you go to zero throttle, it engages. And what it is, it's a very variable geometry turbocharger, so it just closes the vanes on the turbocharger.
Am I the only one that didn't understand that?
what's that, the variable geometry turbo?
Well, the fact that it's always on
You can turn
On
it
is
on.
enabling the engine brake.
Yes.
You can turn the switch on, but it only works
and, got it.
when you hit zero throttle.
Okay. So when you disable, which is what you want to do when you're going down a hill in ice, because you just want to coast down, you don't want to be applying the brakes not under your control. And that will break, if the engine brake is on when you're going downhill on ice, it will be trying to slow the truck down, and
It will actually spin the tires backwards.
yeah, it'll break the tires free and move it sideways.
So
Your
we
day
might
was set.
we might want to have a little label there saying, do not engage if icy. Just
Yeah.
you're going down Cardiac Hill.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting question, you know, if the hill requires it, then you just have to go slow enough anyway, you know, but.
So is the engine brake the same as the exhaust brake?
Same thing.
Is it the same as a Jake brake?
No.
Okay.
The functionality?
Yes. Functions.
So basically, what the exhaust brake does is it closes the vanes of the turbocharger so that it kind of pushes pressure back against the engine and slows down the cylinders from moving, right?
Correct.
Gotcha, okay.
So
It's
it does
the
work
same
like-
function as a Jake brake, it just doesn't work the same.
The same way, okay, gotcha.
Jake brake wants the exhaust
Yeah.
valves.
The outcome is the same, but the actual function, one affects the valves and one affects just blocking the exhaust.
Gotcha, okay. And, you know, what I noticed about the exhaust brake driving the truck just a little bit was that, and Michael, you had this story, right, coming down the hill. What was the story about that?
But the switch is stupid. Because you look at it, you see the symbol, and intuitively I think when I push on the side of the symbol, that's when it's on, but it's actually opposite. So I thought I had it on. I'm going down the hill, I'm like, why am my brakes getting soft? And then I look over, I'm like, maybe it's on the other side, and sure enough. So it's on in the up position,
Yeah, you have to click
not where the
up.
symbol is.
Right.
So it's
It's a little counterintuitive, but we'll
when you see it, it makes sense.
yeah.
When you,
Yeah, I mean, basically it's that on this switch, that's just an identification of what the switch is. I can't control what Freightliner does on.
we put a label on it.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that's the one thing, I couldn't order text symbols from Freightliner.
The
So-
other things that, back to some of the conversation going earlier specific to slip conditions, and you were asking about descending grade, same kind of things that you can do, descending grade are low range for the transfer case and range hold for the transmission. If you use the selector stock for the transmission selector to put it in a lower range, it'll hold a lower range. So you can descend in first range or second range as opposed to.
So it'll be better for select conditions than using the exhaust.
Correct.
Oh, yes.
Correct.
Thank you.
And that's not on the stock, it's on the keypad. The stock is on the internationals.
Oh, okay.
Freightliner's still using the Allison keypad.
So you choose the up and down arrows?
Yeah, the new internationals, they've gone to a stock, kind of like your, like a car would have, sort of.
Gotcha.
I would prefer that because it's easier to not to select something without looking at it. The Edison, you kind of have to know what you put.
Yeah, the international one is more by feel,
Yeah.
and getting used to it. This one, you're actually,
Yeah.
you're looking at it, and once you hit drive, it's going to show you on this one 5, because this is a high-speed transmission.
Although it is
Any more?
nice, it shows you what you've asked for and what you're in.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
There's a monitor as well.
Well, when you select it down, it stays in
Not sure what you're doing with your mouse there, Pete.
I'm trying to get it over to my screen.
It's like a little-
that. Yeah, it should up and down, but you don't know.
Uh-oh.
That's a bad day.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is a bad day, but I mean, basically kind of,
Not the recommended parking orientation.
Keeping the shiny side up is important.
Well, of course, he's not on the concrete.
At least the ladder's not there. Is this before we took delivery, I'm hoping? It's yours.
you know, I don't know, this one, I found this, but I mean, it just kind of,
It's not even-
this can't happen.
Hopefully everybody walked away from it.
Yeah, and it's more kind of talking to you guys more about, you got to keep safety in mind when you're driving these things. And especially on the roads that you guys have out here, you've got really skinny roads, you've got drop-offs on the side where you can get a wheel off. You can get in some trouble with this thing. And keep in mind, you've got 40,000 pounds worth of steel and aluminum and a little bit of water sitting on you. So it is, you do have some weight, and you do need to pay attention, irregardless of all the safety systems that are on these trucks. You still have to drive it, you still have to drive safely, you still have to pay attention. and know what's going on around you at all times. That's basically the point I'm trying to make.
Sugarloaf did have a truck that the firefighters said was dangerous, and a board member took the officer out to show it wasn't dangerous and rolled the truck.
So you made somebody's point.
So does the tank have a stabilizer in
It is baffles.
Baffled.
it? Yes.
Yes,
It's about every 18 inches squared.
Okay, and the 40,000 pounds, is that with the 750? Count?
yeah, the GVW of this truck is rated at 40,000. We have a 14,000 pound front axle, 26,000 pound rear.
So what does it take to stop it at 30 miles an hour, you know?
Brakes.
I mean, like probably a couple hundred
Well,
feet, right?
it depends on your, I mean, it's like everything else. It's going to depend on your driving surface. Is it asphalt? Is it concrete? Is it slick? Is it muddy?
Yeah.
You know, if you're on a straight, flat road, you could probably stop this truck in less than 100 feet.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it'll stop. Between the combination of the exhaust brake and the braking, it will stop.
Right.
But, you know, once again, it's going to be, the ABS is going to take into effect. If the wheels start slipping, it's going to start moving them around. Things are going to happen.
Yeah, that's kind of,
One thing to keep in mind also depends on the age of the tires. That if we haven't swapped the tires out in 10 years, that's going to be worse as they get harder. We need to remember that. We've had trucks with tires.
For the Timberwolf application, they are typically under gross fairly significantly. You'll probably end up weighing 33 or 34,000 pounds. Yeah.
so yeah, basically talking about that is, you know, the systems on this truck, you do have ESC. Freightliner calls it enhanced stability control. I guess I've always called it electronic stability control. I don't know if you could give me I think it's the same thing, but basically what that is you've got a actual computer system on board this truck that is monitoring how you drive. It's looking at wheel speed, it's looking at throttle position, it's looking at steering angle, it's looking at
Angle of the truck.
angle of the truck, the lateral movement, it's looking at brake, you know, you've got any type of brake position. But it actually is a intuitive type of system that watches how you drive. And also it's, the programming in it is to also intuitive enough to kind of, you know, keep a lookout for any type of rollover risk or any type of, it senses any lateral movement. If you're sliding on ice going sideways instead of forward, it will intervene. Did you have a question? Okay. It will intervene, and the way it intervenes is, you know, if it gets into a situation, it'll actually take power away from you, take power away from the engine. It can apply brakes. It'll do all that stuff automatically without any of your input at all. And I'm sure you probably have it on your cars.
And it makes it hard to gap on driving.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you need to
it'll just
slide
quick
through the
drive.
shady spot and keep the momentum when you
Yeah.
have traction after the shady spot. So it kills the RPM, and by the time the RPM recovers, you're into the next shady spot. So,
Yeah,
So-
being able to turn off traction control is actually kind of handy because the siping on the tires needs wheel speed to work.
We don't have a way to turn it off, right?
No, you do not. You do not. The system, but there is one way to turn it off, and you can't turn off traction control. So let me say that. Stability control does turn off with four-wheel drive. That's just something to be aware of. Once you're in four-wheel drive, you no longer have stability control. That's motivated by the system itself can't deal with it. So none of the manufacturers have solved that problem yet.
good to know.
So, but the ABS braking system, is that the same as in a normal car where it just will kind of, the brakes stutter?
They pulse.
They pulse, and then the ATC works in a lot of different ways, but does it also, like if your back wheel is spinning, it will generally take power away from from that wheel and transfer it across the other
Correct.
wheels?
It applies the brakes to the wheel that's spinning.
Oh, I see,
And
okay.
it forces the energy to
Try
If
to
you're-
do too much, it will take the throttle away. Like if you're sitting there trying to smash the throttle down, it's gonna be like, this isn't working, so how about we just take that away and we'll move power over and then it will come back.
Yeah, so if it does sense both wheels spinning, it's gonna take power away until it's able to retain traction. So.
Now, is there any kind of gauge on the truck that if you're about to go into row over range, is there any kind of alert system, or like if you're side hilling or something like that?
If you have an ESC event, you're gonna get that truck with the squiggly lines below it, and it's gonna show up on this truck, it's gonna be in your speedometer.
Have you never had that come on your Super Bowl?
Yes, many times.
Just about to say, you don't have your Super Bowl out, you know.
So, yeah, so you do have that alert,
Right.
and you also have you've actually got an ABS light, and you got an ATC light. So,
Okay.
but yeah, all these systems are automatic and they all work together on this deal. But ultimately, it's not going to prevent you. You want to roll this truck over, you can freaking roll it over.
His question is more about if you statically roll it. If you are side hilling on a steep hill and you're getting close, it does not have any tilt indicator or
No.
monitor.
That is correct.
Like a wheel coming off the side and
Yeah, sort of thing, yeah.
Or just, you're traversing a slope and it's getting steeper.
Yeah.
It's entirely up to the driver to decide when enough is enough.
Yeah, those warning systems do exist, but they're not standard and they're not required in fire trucks. Very few customers. I think I've had one customer that has put on a, lateral G force measuring device to get a warning, because that will tell you.
But the rollover, how easy would this truck roll over? Like, I can't remember exactly where the water is in the truck, but is it have a pretty low center of gravity, or?
Yeah, relative to what fire trucks used to be.
Yeah.
They're much lower anymore. Timberwolves all have, we can specify all the Timberwolves with stability control, but NFPA requires one of three things. Either you can have stability control, which is an active system that's actually taking care of you while you're driving, or you can tilt it, and it has to tilt within so many degrees, or you can calculate the center of gravity. And NFPA requires that if the calculated center of gravity exceeds 80%, then you have to use one of the other two systems. You either have to tilt it to prove it, or you have to have stability control. With no exceptions that I'm aware of, Timberwolves all end up below 80% for calculated center of gravity.
so your actual water tank on this truck is, since we moved the speed lanes as back forward as possible, so that front compartment, your water tank starts kind of towards the middle of that front compartment and goes over the rear axle to probably the end of that middle compartment.
Overwheel compartment, yeah.
Overwheel compartment. So it's as centered, it's really pretty centered on that truck because you've got that wide transverse front. So it is pulled back over that rear axle.
We have this picture over here. Is this the same chassis system?
Yeah, well, that's an international, but frame rail height's about the same. It's Meritor axles and transfer case on the international as well as on the Freightliner. So the finished frame rail height is within a quarter inch between the two chassis for any given GVWR.
That's a pretty good tilt on that truck right there.
Yeah, you will have sucked the seat into your body before you ever get to that point.
You're happy now.
So your heart will know, your head should know.
32 degrees?
Yeah,
It's very unpleasant to be in a big vehicle.
Yeah, that's an actual tilt table test.
yeah. When you weigh it, a third of your weight's against the door, something's wrong.
Emissions. So this is all going to be what the emission systems on this truck is going to be something new for you guys to have in your firehouse. Right now, you're currently for these you just have a diesel particulate filters on your Fords. correct?
Only on one.
Only on one. So
That's the 10.
now, in addition to your diesel particulate filter, you've got another system, well, the whole system is a selective catalytic reduction system, which now adds the element of the diesel exhaust fluid into another stage of that exhaust after that exhaust passes through the diesel particulate filter. So basically how that works is that hot exhaust exits the engine, it goes into the diesel particulate filter, which is a big ceramic canister type of filter, which basically replaces your muffler. Inside that filter, it traps the soot, and through heat, or what they call regeneration, it changes that soot to ash, which collects inside that filter. From then on, I think about what they're saying is around 90% of the bad stuff in the exhaust is trapped inside that diesel particulate filter. The rest of it passes on to basically a reactor chamber, where the rest of that exhaust, which is I believe it's just like nitric oxide and what is it, nitrogen dioxide?
Nitrogen dioxide and nitric oxide is what's going into this new reactor. And now that diesel exhaust fluid that you have to put on board the trucks is sprayed inside that and reacts with those emissions, and basically comes out as a nitrogen gas and water. So your emissions coming out your tailpipe are almost virtually nothing now. I don't recommend putting your mouth over it or do anything like that, but you will notice the difference.
It's not as
It's amazing. It's amazing. You could run the truck inside the shop and it just.
not that he should.
Yeah.
That windows doors open.
Carbon monoxide is still present, but just the other emissions aren't, correct?
The bad stuff is gone. It turns it into water vapor and
Amazing.
nitrogen, which is all harmful.
The difference between
Unharmful.
the difference between the Type 1 and then that truck, which are all old school, just turning on in the station and putting out, you just smell it for 10 minutes after.
Yeah.
And on that one you don't.
Yeah, these trucks, I mean, you'll notice it's very clean. You don't have a smell. And actually pleasant to be around, even though it's a pain in the ass with these emission systems. The way, over time, that diesel particulate filter is going to collect a bunch of ash in it, and to the point where it will need to be professionally cleaned. So you'll start noticing that. You'll get more back pressure on your engine, stuff like that. And also you'll start seeing, I think, more black exhaust coming out the tailpipe as that thing gets dirty.
Before it does that, it start regening more. It try to regen more often than not. And then what you'll end up with is it want to constantly regen. Once it gets to that point, the filters are pretty much beyond cleaning on the truck. They have to be taken out and baked. And usually what we find at that point, if they won't regen and clean, that the porcelain's actually melted down from people not letting them cool. And that porcelain melts down, breaks, and then it just plugs it, and then you end up buying a $2,000 filter.
So how long does it take, based on experience with warranty fire departments that drive their trucks much, but I know them a lot. How long does it take until?
So one of the things that you want to do on this truck is use the high idle.
Right.
Because with all of the emissions that's on these, it doesn't have enough engine pressure to push the moisture out. And what happens is that moisture sits in there and it collects. And once it keeps collecting, then it plugs that filter up. So the higher RPMs actually helps push the moisture and everything out and through that filter. So it's best to always use high idle. So once you get on the scene, go ahead and hit high idle, do what you need to do, and carry on.
A significant fraction of our truck starts, the trucks run for 30 minutes or less. And then we shut them off because we get canceled en route or canceled as we're just after pulling out of the station. How long, does the truck need to come up to temperature and get?
It won't take long to get up to temperature. That's one of the things about these new engines, they will come up to temperature rather quickly. The other thing I can say is you need to make sure that you give it a little bit of idle time at the station when you come back, let it cool down. Because coming up this hill, you're going to get up to the top, it's going to need to set for 2 or 3 minutes at idle just to cool the exhaust down.
And the turbocharger.
Yeah, the turbo, yeah. But the exhaust is the biggest thing, is if you constantly drive up the hill, back it into the station, shut it off, within a year, 2 years, you're going to be buying a filter.
So would the SOP on that be to park on the apron,
Yeah,
let it out for it, and then back it in?
yeah, which we do with all of our trucks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Including even for,
Good practice.
that's just a good practice, anytime we take it out, it needs to be on the apron for a few minutes before.
For, yeah, 2 or 3 minutes is a good time frame. Because you got to figure, the average exhaust temperature on this truck is probably going to be about 900 to 1,000 degrees. And it's going to take it a little bit of time just to cool down. It needs to be somewhere 500-600 degrees before you shut it off. So it's going to take it a little bit to cool down.
Wouldn't that be under load if we're coming down a hill for 2 miles and we're like literally idling, but maybe with the engine brake and downshifting?
Yeah.
There's no load, there's no turbo engagement. I mean, there is, but it's not. In other words, that could be considered the cooling procedure, but I'm asking this more for our chief. Do you still want us to sit for 3 minutes on the apron, even though we've just basically cooled the truck down with our descent?
I think so.
So coming down from Gold Hill, you mean, for example?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's not hot. We've been.
If it's just 3 minutes, it's probably worth doing. Just as a standard procedure so that you don't.
Yeah, I would just make it a standard procedure, just
We should
regardless.
ask everybody to do that just for the turbochargers on the other trucks.
Yeah.
And knock on wood, we've been lucky so far. So it's a good procedure, so we can continue that with this truck. But you're saying that we can be in high idle at the station when we come back, right?
When you come back, like if you come up Sunshine Canyon and you get to up to the station, you can let it just idle at normal idle. But what we found is that if you go to a medical call and you're sitting out on a medical call for 20-30 minutes, all that moisture is just sitting in the filters and it's not going anywhere.
So put it in high,
So if you put it into high idle, it helps push all that stuff out.
The high idle, they've got it tied into the cruise stuff, so
Correct.
it's not an actual switch, it's a.
Right, you have to turn the cruise
You
on.
have to cruise on.
Fix it up.
So
We've talked about that with a few people that I've driven with, yeah.
And so the regen cycle, when that comes on, you'll get a light on your dashboard, right?
Yes.
Yes.
And then do you have to stop the truck, or
No.
what's the procedure for that?
So we have a procedure, we can talk about that, where anytime that light comes on, and tell me if I'm wrong, we ignore it on the scene, but then we go to the station when we come back, we park it on the apron, and we hit that regen button.
Well, and usually it will regen. If you're going, literally anytime it's under a load, it will regen. But if you get that high exhaust temperature light, you definitely want to wait until that light goes off before you back it into the station. And even after that light goes off, I'd give it another 5 minutes.
Right, and the reason for that, at least Chief explained to me, is that when it's regenning, the exhaust is ultra hot. So
Oh,
if you-
it's like
if you're parked
1800
under-
degrees.
So if you're parked under a tree or in grass, or, you're
Oh,
gonna
yeah.
have to start a fire.
Yeah, it'd be Colorado Springs all over again.
Yeah.
yeah,
Is that how that happened? This one that they're doing right now?
The one down by the airport was caused by a cop that drove out into a field and the
Sheriff deputy, yep.
No kidding.
catalytic converter set the field on fire.
Huh.
so, and we'll talk about it, but diesel exhaust fluid, basically, like we said, it's all that stuff is deionized water and urea.
From pig farms, right? I think.
I don't know, we all call it
Wait,
that.
I don't know.
We like to say pig farms, but
Could be I got a cat, I don't know. You know, it doesn't smell as bad as cat piss, but I mean,
It still smells bad.
it still smells bad. Don't drink it. The biggest thing with it is if you spill it when you're filling these tanks or handling it, clean it up. Rinse it around with water. Clean up because it'll crystallize once it hits air. It crystallizes. It likes to stain aluminum. It's not going to eat it, but it's going to stain it pretty good. You'll notice it'll turn this white, kind of a soapy type thing, but it's just nasty stuff.
Like a frosted window.
Yeah. So clean it up. One of the new areas, what you're going to have, you actually have a bar level to show your level of diesel exhaust fluid, and also an icon which will alert when that thing gets low and give you different signals. But and that's integrated into your fuel gauge. We talk a lot about when to add the diesel exhaust fluid. On a recommendation, we like to tell people to wait till you get to 50% on that gauge, and then we buy this Def Blue. It's a 2.5 gallon box with a nozzle on it, and your tank on this truck is 5 gallons. So once you get to half, you got 2.5 gallons. You can put the whole box in there and fill it back up. The thing about diesel exhaust fluid is once it's exposed to air, it starts crystallizing. So having if you put a partial box in there and try to close it back up and seal it back up, once you open that seal on a brand new box, the air is going to go in it and it's going to start crystallizing inside that box. And so, it just makes sense. What Brandon kind of recommending is wait till 50%, dump a whole box in there, throw away the box, you're good to go. Pretty simple. Some people have used 55 gallon drums, and that becomes a problem because it sits there and collects air, it starts crystallizing, it goes bad. So have a pallet of DEF sitting in your station, carry a box on the truck, but that's a recommendation to do.
Does it have an expiration date when it's just on the shelf unopened?
What you're gonna find on the truck is you'll see that if you're in the summertime, it's gonna get hot, and then it's gonna get cold, hot, cold, hot, cold. It will start to break down. But if you just usually take it and put it on the truck and you go on a deployment and you come back and you can take it off, you're not gonna have an issue with it. It's when you start getting the extreme going from hot to cold, consistently it will break down.
We'll just have a very used the one that's on the truck to fill it and then throw it down. Yeah, just buy a new one. The same.
So another thing on this, your truck is going to monitor your diesel exhaust fluid levels. So basically, once you get to a point where that diesel exhaust fluid is low, if you do not fill it up at half a tank, it'll eventually, that green bar will turn yellow with the one symbol there, and you're going to get that indicator that was underneath right above the gauge is going to turn on. It's going to be basically a solid yellow. Your exhaust plume with little water droplets over top of water. That will illuminate. To get rid of that, fill a full DEF. If you continue to choose to ignore that, that symbol is going to start flashing, and your bar graph is going to turn red. Solution is put DEF in the thing. If you continue to ignore that, you eventually will get a check engine light, and the thing will be flashing. You need to put DEF in the truck.
So this, I will tell you, if it runs out of depth, it will go into limp mode. This is like one time that it will go into limp mode, is if you let it run out of depth fluid, it will go into limp mode. it will just say, we're not doing this. And it gives you enough power to get somewhere to get that fluid.
But these things don't happen very quickly.
Yeah.
It's a fair amount of engine runtime between each stage of the light, so you've got to continue ignoring it for, probably a month before you would ever get it.
Yeah, I mean, but if you ignore it, this is what's gonna happen. Or if you try to put something other than diesel exhaust fluid in that tank, the sensors in there are gonna detect that too. And they're probably gonna have more problems than you would just put in DEF in.
You're referring to urine, just,
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically telling if you have to go to the bathroom and
Yeah.
decide it's a better spot.
Yeah.
you probably
Easy
wouldn't-
enough, but it's 50%, we fill it to the top.
Yep.
Just like you said.
And we talk a lot about these doom scenarios associated with emissions control products. We really don't have that many problems with them. I mean, there's the potential because these systems are they totally, and they totally consume everything about diesel engine operations from before. The mechanical diesel engines, they ran as long as you kept fuel and oxygen available, and that's just not the way it is anymore. But we don't see a real lot of problems. We saw a rash of sensor problems, and during COVID, the supply chain issues have made getting sensors difficult. So we've got a lot of people that have had a bad experience, but we don't see a lot of repeated failures within any system. We've got a lot of trucks out there that we've put in service and never had a problem with.
Most of those are because they're sticking to one type of fluid and filling the tank when needed. I mean, to get a half a tank, to go through about 2.5 gallons of DEF fluid, you're probably talking close to 100, 150 gallons of fuel.
Yeah,
So
at least 3 tanks of diesel.
Yeah, it's quite a bit.
Yeah, we are still not at half. I think we have just about 2,000 miles on it.
Yeah, I mean, these are very, like we're talking about, this doesn't just continually quickly happen. It's gonna take time, but you just need to be aware of it.
Shelf life is a year. I looked it up. 2 separate websites said shelf life is give or take a year, and it likes cooler temperatures. The heat, hot temperatures breaks it down faster, like a lot of things. So just FYI.
Yeah, a lot of time, but typically we're using, a lot, at least is the DEF Blue brand. Comes in a nice box, you get a nozzle with it.
That's what we have.
So it's easy to get, it's clean, easy, so.
Quick question back on the high temperature DPF cycle. Is there like a frequency that happens, or
Just type to use.
type
Type to use, idle time, all the conditions associated with what's gonna cause an engine to create more soot. Low engine speeds, cool engine operations build up soot faster than
Sure.
high horsepower. But again, don't let that freak you out. It's a multi-stage light. You're gonna get a light telling you, hey, you should think about running a regeneration, and then you're gonna get a light saying, no, really, you should consider a regeneration. 3rd stage, 4th stage, just like with the SCR.
Yeah, I've got it on my tractor. I'm just asking, does this kick in automatically though, or when it's giving you some indication before it actually goes into?
Yeah, just getting ready to talk about all that too. So, yeah, oh, you're good. You're good. So yeah, so regeneration, basically, it is basically the process of taking all that soot, that where non-burnt fuel, motor oil, whatever, taking that soot and turning it into ash through heat. This is one of the new lights you're going to have on your truck that will probably come on more than the other emission lights. Is this HES light, exhaust plume with a thermometer in it, high exhaust system temperatures. And when you see this, don't get alarmed.
It's just an information light.
It's an information. It's telling you that, hey, you've got this engine, everything exhausts hot enough that you need to be aware of of your surroundings, but also it's actually cleaning that filter right now. I think it's doing a passive regeneration. And it's going to typically happen if you're at highway speeds, which there's not a lot of highway right here, but for you guys it'd be under severe load, which would be coming up the hill, pumping, different things like that. And it's a normal process. It's what that engine's designed to do. If you get it, during a call, and you come back and that light is still on, keep that thing on the apron. Don't pull it in the station.
So it can go into that mode in the middle of a call?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of a problem.
Well, no, it's not dosing. Where you have a problem is when the truck is actually dosing. It's actually putting diesel fuel into the particulate filter to increase the heat. So like during a manual regeneration, that's what it does. This just says, hey, your engine is under enough load that you have enough heat that we're making progress against your filter content.
Yeah.
It's just informing you. It's not a problem, and it's not anything the engine wouldn't have otherwise done.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that it doesn't go in high heat when we're at someone's house under the tree, and that vertical exhaust now pushes 89 degree.
Well, I mean, when you get that light, it means you've got high exhaust.
Okay, that's my question. Yeah, so we can't just, so really every time we park that truck, we have to make sure we're not parked under a tree.
You should, just in case, because if you're doing a long pumping operation, it may get to high exhaust temperatures.
It's kind of extremely counterintuitive to what a fire truck should do.
This is the essence of my question, which is knowing that this could kick in under some circumstances, but on its own, we need to just be aware and vigilant about where we're positioning it, if it might be under high load and this could kick in.
So again, this isn't kicking in. This is only an indicator light. This is just telling you that your exhaust is above a certain temperature.
Right.
It's not actively doing anything.
So this
it
is
would
the
have been-
passive regen because we're working hard. It's telling us
Correct.
we're working the engine hard, so of course the exhaust is going to be hot.
Your other diesel engine would have had hot exhaust as well.
Right.
It just wouldn't have had an indicator to tell you.
Got it. Now we know.
Yeah, the difference is that this one, of course, has a vertical exhaust, right, which is great, because it keeps exhaust away from us, but this is the issue. I mean, we requested that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you if you have a exhaust off the side, then you do the same to the grass.
But the cat is still down low, right?
Your SCR, all that stuff is on that right hand,
And
your
that's
officer
gonna be-
side.
That's gonna be just as hot, or.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be
Yeah,
hot.
so it's not just where the exhaust exit, it's also all the hardware feeding into that, right? So we need to make sure,
Correct.
not just what we're parking under, but what we're parking over,
Yeah, don't go parking grass 3 feet tall.
of course.
So would it help if at the truck check we just put the truck in regen mode?
No.
From that, no. Okay.
You can't do it. You can only
Okay.
start a manual regeneration when it's requesting a regeneration. You cannot force it to do it.
Yeah, as I said, this isn't something you can schedule on your
Right.
weekly or monthly checks.
Okay.
This is an automatic system. So basically what not to do is, put in the firehouse. And another thing is, don't shut the engine down if you don't have to. You want it to do its thing. If you shut it down, all you're doing is not allowing that engine to clean itself and do it. You're gonna run into problems.
Cool down.
And cool down. And another thing, don't that tailpipe, even though it's got that metal screen on it, don't touch it. Your cap step overlays, you see they're laser cut, they're ventilated. Don't put your hand on them. Just be very cognizant of these things. They run freaking hot. So yeah, your regeneration, we talked about basically that first step is at high exhaust system temperatures. Second step, when it actually, calls for a regen, you are going to get that exhaust plume with the 2 bars going through. That's on your top left portion of your dash. When that symbol illuminates, that is basically telling you, hey, you need to do a regen. You've got your diesel particulate filter needs to be cleaned out. You can either go take it up and down the hill and try to create heat to get it to go into create that high exhaust temperatures, so it does it that way. Or you can at this time take it outside and do a forced park regen. If again, like the other stuff we're talking about, if you ignore it and don't do either one of those things, that thing's gonna start blinking at you. And at that time, when it's blinking at you, I believe, at least what I think from Freightliner, is you have to do a park regen. So driving it, so you have to physically go outside. Please take it outside.
Yeah.
And you have to force the regen, and that regen switch is on that center dash.
But that can be avoided, right, if we
Yeah.
don't let it get to that point? Because that would be the worst case scenario where on a call, in motion and it starts blinking, says we have to do a park regen, we're like, well, do we want to park it right now?
You will get the first stage light before you get the blinking
So
light.
always stay sensitive to that.
Yeah.
Just never let it get to the.
If your first stage light comes on, start looking for an opportunity to do a park regen. If you don't have some high horsepower demand that's going to come up. If you're not going to be climbing some big hill or something, just put it in line to do it. And the things to be aware of for running a regeneration, we talked about it's got to be calling for it, so it has to have the light on. And you have to be at operating temperature. So it's come back after a call and the light is on, but it got cooled off and put away because it was late and people weren't going to run a regen. You come back in the next day, pull it out in the apron, I'm going to run a regen. It's not going to run a regen until everything's at operating temperature.
So
So
in
you
that
got-
case, we should have let it do it while it was warm.
Or take it out first thing, drive it, bring it back, and then do a regen on it.
How long does the manual regen take?
Depending on how early it is in the stages, the earlier you get it, the less time it takes. So we often see them running 15 or 20 minutes if you're getting on them early. But if you allow it to get into second stage or third stage, you might be out there for 45 minutes or an hour.
So, yeah, again, you know, that third stage, you start ignoring it, you get it blinking, then you get a check engine light. Again, this thing, like we talked about on emergency vehicles, it will not shut down, it will not derate. It will let itself eat itself. You probably will start seeing performance issues on this truck if you do not run a regen or, you know, get it cleaned out. So it's something you do need to be aware of.
But back to your other question, we see extremely long cycle times between needing to run regenerations. People have got to be not following any rules at all to really allow that to happen very frequently. The systems have gotten good.
It usually does, if I pull a trail on it, it usually does a regen probably about every 120 to 150 hours depending on use. So it will regen quite often in comparison to hours, I guess. I look at it that way. But for you guys, it'd probably regen maybe once every couple months or so.
So these are where your two symbols are located. Left-hand side, top dash above your RPM gauge. Your HES light, and then your DPF filter status light.
And then water and fuel, right? Above
Yeah.
that.
Water and fuel, and then your battery.
The fuel contaminated, water contaminated fuel. So you have to pull the fuel, I guess, or you check.
There's a drain on the
Drain?
water separator.
So those little droplets, that should not be on, right? And if it does
Correct.
come on, then what do you have to do?
So the separator is full with water and
There's a drain there's a fuel water separator. There's a drain that you can open and drain the water out of it. And
the same, no,
I'm sorry?
you have the same in the other truck.
Yeah.
It's a little more difficult on the tank itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. That it is.
Not the greatest of pictures, but that bottom right below your air horn, mirror heat, and your doors. This is your force regen switch. So pushing it up will start a force regen. But what you'll need to have the DPF filter light on your dash illuminated. You'll need to. Am I wrong?
No.
Okay. You'll need to be in neutral and you need to have the park brake set. And then you can force a regen. Now, if you get a call during that time period, you can get in the truck, tap your brake, tap your throttle. It will stop the regen process. Go do your call.
Or you can push the switch down.
Yeah.
Or you can push the switch down.
I recommend against that. Just
You have to say, the switch down portion, you actually have a regen inhibit switch on this truck. We really recommend you not use it.
don't ever use it.
If you turn it on, basically it prevents the truck from regen, from doing its thing.
To Pete's point, any of the things that you would not want it to run a regeneration during, like pumping operations and things like that, as soon as you've selected any of those things, it takes the regen out of the picture automatically. So there's no reason to inhibit it. You know, over the road guys, they might have reasons that they'd want to inhibit it for the fire service. There's no point in inhibiting it.
Let's see, overview of your center console. I'm sure you guys have all looked in there, but siren, your radio, this is your TFT remote control for your front bumper monitor. Your position control for that TFT monitor is that upper right hand monitor there. Above that joystick controller is a DigiView screen, which will give you your water, foam levels on your tanks and things like that. And then you have basically your pump controls in that keypad up above, which on your discharge side will control your high pressure side only. And a lot of this stuff will go off when we get out there out to the truck. That's your keypad. So you do have pump controls there, and also your scene lights. Your front scene is basically that's a 4-position switch. So you've got off, spot, flood, and scene just by pressing it in sequence to get it to what you want. The other ones are just on or off. And then your emergency warning, the red button there basically turns on all your emergency warning lights, and obviously it turns off. So there's no switches to individually turn things on or off. And this is going to look really similar, be about the same as what is on your pump panel.
Quick question, if we wanted to have rear emergent lights, is what you just said, is that it's not an option. In other words, let's say we have an agitated medical person, we don't want to project any emergent toward where we're headed, but we do want to alert vehicles coming behind from the rig.
No option.
There's no option for that.
Lights on, lights off.
It's all our.
And there's no setting, nothing we can do, or there's no flash of any software that could adjust that, or give us an option, or kill switch for the front, I don't know.
Theoretically you can. NFPA says you cannot.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's not a hardware issue. It's a standard issue.
Got
It
it.
happens too often that the individual switches, people turn them off and on, and then people rely on the master switch, but don't realize that only half the light's on. So,
That's why NFPA changed it.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So again, there's nothing that can stop you as the end user from doing what you want, but that's why the manufacturers don't offer it anymore.
Your pump panel, same DigiView panel there. This is controlling, the only thing it doesn't control that the other one does was your front camera, your ground sweeps, emergency warning. A lot of the stuff replaces, but you do have a horn switch. You can control your body scene lights on that. Your pump heater, basically that is going to turn on and off a fan on your pump heater on there. Below that, pressure governor on the left, your DigiView screen on the right, which gives you all your tank levels, your foam, water. It also gives you a lot of readings on engine temperature, oil temperature, things like that.
fuel level too.
Yeah.
Fuel level too. So, and all that will
Nice.
get out to the truck and get our hands on it. Your Foam Pro 2001 control head, and then also you have a CAFS compressor, a digital controller to be able to turn that compressor off. Right now that compressor comes on automatically when you do engage the pump. Left side, you have your gauges up top are for, two of them are for your front body speed lays, your upper and lower speed lay. Those are all 1.5 inch discharges. They are CAFS compatible. And the third one is for the front bumper 2.5 inch cross lay, which is also CAFS. Those are your 3 CAFS discharges. Air valves, your valves to open water are in the middle. They are a is a momentary switch, so you can position that valve in a certain position by getting a feel for it in time. But it is a momentary switch. The switches below it, those control the air valve, and they either are open or they're closed. Right side, you do have an air outlet on this truck. That Watrous auto sink, this is all for your calf system. And what that does is it balances your air pressure with your water discharge pressure to allow for calf's operation. And also, it has a fixed setting which will set the air compressor at 150 psi. Unload is in basically where you want to be when you start the truck up and after you shut it down. This unload mode is basically standby mode for the compressor. Different drain valves, which we'll go over on the truck, foam manifold, and also your calf's heat exchanger. All items we're going to talk about on your shutdown procedures on how to, shut this truck down and how to, draining it, flushing it, things like that. And we'll go over that all outside.
Can you go over just briefly, I know we talked about it on the phone the other day, the pump cooling, what does it do, and then the auxiliary engine cooling? What is actually moved to cool either?
So your pump cooling actually is it's a quarter turn valve that opens and closes a little 3/8 line that goes from the water tank to the fire pump. And it just provides a recirculatory cooling, auxiliary cooling to cool your fire pump. It's not going to affect any type of discharge pressures per se. It's just another auxiliary way to cool your fire pump.
What's the difference between that and recirc? I mean, like you
Nothing.
said,
The only difference is the recirc valve is either open or closed, and it being 1.5 inches, it takes all the pressure. So if you're pumping in 150 pounds and you open your recirculate valve, it takes that 150 pounds and dumps it into the tank at 1.5 inch discharge.
So it'll move a lot of water. Long and short of it is that'll move a lot of water. So trying to do that simultaneously to pumping a hand line is going to be difficult because you might not be able to get the desired line pressure because so much of it's going back into the tank. The 3/8 inch line, if you've got that open, it's going to continue cooling if you stop flowing water down your hose line, but it doesn't move enough water to really affect your discharge pressure.
So the 3/8 is sufficient to keep the pump happy at any RPM with no
I
discharge?
wouldn't ever go there. I would never say it in the RPM.
I was,
Because it's
yeah.
it's only
That's why I
recirculating-
said it that way.
I was gonna ask
It's
the
only
same question.
recirculating the normal pressure side of the pump, so if you are in high pressure, it's not recirculating that side of the pump. Consequently, if you're deadheading the high pressure side, even if you've got that cooling line open, you're providing a benefit and you're going to eventually find steam underneath your truck.
It will open that thermal rate valve.
Yeah, the thermal open and put steam underneath your truck.
The engine cooler portion takes pump water, circulates it through around the engine coolant area. It does not mix with the coolant, but it provides auxiliary cooling up there for your engine.
Those are those hoses that are not factory, that are on top of the engine, right?
Correct. And all that does is it has a small radiator up top, and it allows the cooler water to go around the chamber that's allowing the coolant to go through, and it's helped cooling that water down. So if it's a really, really hot day and you're pumping and there's no airflow, you can open that up and it'll help cool the engine down, and that's all it's going to
Does it
do.
use its own pump or does it get?
No, it
pressure
uses
the
water from the pump.
Okay. And then there's a ball valve on top. That's only if it leaks?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a shut-off valve.
Well,
Yeah, that's right.
also there are lines coming off of the cooling system, the engine cooling system, to feed the heater in the back in the pump compartment.
And those
There are
ball
shut valves
valves
for those.
are to shut the heater off in the
In the
back.
back.
In case you do have a line rupture, you can close those lines off.
So that's the same system for the pump heater and the engine cooler.
No,
Two separate
two
systems.
separate, but they're close to the same area.
Okay.
And we can tilt the hood and
Yeah,
go over
yeah.
the differences.
Yeah.
Does the pump cooler affect your pressure?
No,
I mean, extremely nominally, not anything that you would ever
Not
notice
like
as
the
an operator.
recirc,
no.
Say again?
not like the recirc.
Yeah.
No.
supposed to be pneumatic, but it's hydraulic.
So when we talk about your Kuzma is now in your body compartment. It's a big, and it's also a 120 volt inverter. Your overwheel compartment, and then your 120 volt compressor that fills your chassis air when it's plugged in the station, or since that thing is an inverter, has 120 volts. If it senses low air, if you're just sitting there not running, it will kick on. If
Yeah,
it's-
we'll have to change that because there's no way in 10 years that is not going to drain the batteries on this bed overnight.
Yeah, if you leave that thing on and not being plugged in, it is going to drain the batteries.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
So those are located there because there's no room in that cab to put this stuff in. So, guys, that's all I got for PowerPoint.
All right, okay. So is there any reason not to run the pump coolant when you're in pump operation?
I recommend using it all the time.
It's just a safety valve, right?
Yep.
That you're not gonna burn your pump up.
Right.
That's good for me.
Also do turn it off, operate the valve, because we've got end users that will just say, we're just gonna leave it open all the time. And then at one time that you do need to close it because a line broke,
Right.
you can't close
You
it.
can't close it.
Because the valve's
And
been open
you
for
do
2
need to
years.
operate it open and closed.
Yeah.
But especially if you're doing like pump and roll operations, I highly recommend that you leave that pump cooling line open
Why not? Yeah.
and just let it do its thing.
Copy that.
All right, well, as Pete had mentioned, really about the only things that are different from probably any other truck you have are those, now that the chassis are all multiplexed, they've interlocked those functions to other items. Specifically, the transfer case range change is going to require you to be in neutral, so you have to select neutral as your range at the transmission, or out of range, and you have to have your park brake set, right?
For that low range, right?
For low range.
Yeah.
To switch the transfer case either direction, you have to meet those 2 requirements.
Yeah.
From low range to high or high to low.
Yeah. Yep. All right, Pete had touched on what most of these things are during the presentation. So you got your individual line pressure gauges associated with each discharge. And then you've got a single gauge here that's an analog gauge on the high pressure side of the pump. All right, the way this pump works is it's a 5-stage pump. All of the volume, the entire volume is done on the first stage. So your 1,000 gallon a minute rating is all on that first stage of that pump. It doesn't use any of the other impellers. It never is cumulative. Like you're used to 2-stage pumps, domestic two-stage pumps. You would either be in parallel or series. If you're in parallel, the impellers are working together for volume. If you're in series, it's stepping from one impeller to the next to boost pressure, right? This pump is not that way. It's a multi-stage pump, but it is always in series. There is no parallel selection. So what you're doing when you move the transfer valve from normal pressure to high pressure is you are increasing the supply of water that's being fed to the high pressure pump and closing a return line. So when you are in normal pressure, it restricts the amount of water going to the high pressure pump and opens a return line to suction so that it's cooling those impellers all of the time, but it's not actually doing anything. It's not contributing to the flow. So when you go to high pressure, you're going to close that return, you're going to maximize the supply to the high pressure pump, and that's where each of those other 4 impellers are going to provide the sequential boost. You see about 3.5 times normal pressure on the high pressure side of the pump for output. So if you're standing on about 100 pounds on a normal pressure pump, when you engage high pressure, you would reasonably expect to see between 350 and 400 pounds. And we'll see that when we play with it. You can move that transfer valve at any point in time. As with most things, it's a little easier on systems if you do it at engine idle or at a lower pressure.
I'm sorry, can you point to what you're talking about, just so we have a reference for that? Because some people might not understand what you're talking about. Thank you. Awesome.
The purple switch is what's going to enable the high pressure side of the pump, and that's what's going to move that transfer valve. You have specific resources that are coupled to the discharge for the high pressure pump. There are spray bars on this truck, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So you have a bumper turret, you have spray bars, and you have a booster reel. Those are all fed from the high pressure manifold. As I mentioned, when that opens that recirculation line for cooling those things, so if you're on normal pressure, you're going to get no water out of any of those resources. It's much easier for that water to take the path of coming back to suction than it is to try to run down a line and get to a load. So if you're going to use your bumper turret, your spray bars, or your booster line, you have to be in high pressure. Otherwise, on the normal pressure side of the pump, it's no different than what you would expect. Whatever is coupled to that discharge, to that outlet, is you're going to be controlling by opening that specific valve.
But all three of those can be run from inside the cab.
All three. Oh, yes. Yes. All three of those resources can be used from within the cab. And that's something else that we'll touch on while we're talking about that. Oftentimes for like a quick knockdown with a booster reel or something like that, even if you're going to operate at an elevated pressure, nobody has to come back to the pump operator's panel. You can engage the pump, open the tank to pump line, and then locally charge that resource. And you can use the cruise controls to increase engine speed. So there's a digital discharge pressure gauge in the cab. So if you want 400 pounds on your booster reel, you can just throttle up to 1,400, 1,500 RPM, and you'll see about 400 pounds on the high pressure side for using that resource.
And then on the pump interval, it's whatever RPM you have based on driving in low range. Yeah.
That's correct. You're not going to have a fixed discharge pressure. That also is going to tie back into governor operations. The governor doesn't care about the high pressure side of the pump. It doesn't measure the high pressure side of the pump. Your only indication of what your pressure is on the high pressure side is this gauge and the digital gauge in the cab. Yeah. This is for controlling pressure governor like any other normal pressure structural firefighting pump. You're going to set this to control whatever you want your engine pressure to be, and then control your individual line pressure gauges by throttling discharge valves. All right, other items that are back in this panel we'll go through. There's an autofill. All right, what the autofill does is plumbed off of this, there's a valve here. So if you are to bring in your supply, pressurized supply into here, but you're wanting to do compressed air foam operations, pressurized supply is a disadvantage for compressed air foam applications because it causes the engine to need to work less, right? If you're bringing in 70, 75 pounds on a hydrant, you're at 110 pounds just at idle because the single stage pump provides about 35 pounds of boost.
So for some of the newer folks, so when you use calves, it's best to use the water out of the tank, not from your supply.
Correct. Correct. So the autofill, what that allows you to do is to bring your pressurized supply into the steamer, but not impact the actual suction side of the pump. It doesn't establish a larger head pressure on the suction side of the pump. So it will automatically open and close to keep your water tank between about half and full.
And keep your intake valve closed, and that does it to the side, to the direct fill.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. It's operating this valve here to put water directly back into the tank as opposed to the suction side of the pump.
Tried it out the other day. It started opening at 50%.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It should open about 50 and it should go closed right about full, just shy of full.
7/8.
All right, so what this does is it enables the auto tank fill, right? By turning it on, it's going to say, okay, I know I'm supposed to do my thing, and then it's going to start watching the tank level. You can force that valve to open, like if you're just refilling your tank after an operation, you want it completely full. If you just push and hold that, it's going to hold that valve open.
Okay, push and hold it open. Good to know.
Yep.
And it'll hold it open as long as you're leaning on it.
Yep. Next switch in is the tank to pump switch, exactly as it sounds. It opens the valve that's between the water tank and the fire pump. Next is the primer switch. All right, the primer on this truck is different than what is on your other pumpers. Those are going to be rotary vane primers, where you've got these three little vanes inside of a cylinder that are being used to create a vacuum. This has a little bitty single cylinder double acting piston pump. It's driven off of the input shaft. It's belt driven off the input shaft. Then there's a cylinder that strokes to either
Input shaft into the pump.
Into the pump, okay. Right. So anytime your pump is running, that primer has the capacity to operate. If it doesn't see discharge pressure, it's going to tell the primer to run. And what it does is it takes that cylinder off of the tensioner, allows the tensioner to tighten the belt, starts driving the pump. It sounds different. It makes like a pop, 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 pop noise because it's a little piston in there going back and forth.
The pump has to be on.
Pump has
like
to be
all
on.
other trucks.
That's correct.
Okay.
You can't pre-prime.
Okay.
Right.
Because we normally do that with the other trucks, and I think I erroneously told people that on this truck too, just from habit.
Yeah.
On the other trucks, okay.
No.
On the past one.
So yeah, if you're dry and you have to prime for a week and a half to get it up from big draft, that's hard on the pump.
It's not really. It's hard on your water pump.
Yeah. If you're dry, yeah.
Let's say you're completely empty,
Yes.
and now you may not have a perfect seal on your draft line.
Yeah.
So it takes you 5 minutes to put water in it.
Yes. It is more. Getting those things hot is not good, right? But neither is at the end of the world. They are. It is designed to operate under those conditions as well, right? What you will see though is, given our altitude here, that positive displacement piston pump is a lot more efficient than rotary vane primers. It'll pull a prime a lot quicker. I've seen these things pull 26 inches of vacuum at 9,000 feet. It is a good idea to elevate engine speed a little, right? So if you're, because that pump, like any other little compressor or pump, it's going to run faster, it's going to work faster if you are turning a little bit faster. But I would say it would have to be extenuating circumstances, like a really, really bad draft line connection, for you to ever have to worry about actually getting your pump hot enough to do any damage. It is, as a general rule, it's a good practice to
And so
not
that-
run your pump dry.
When you engage the primer, it will run until it has pressure.
Correct. It's about 25 pounds of discharge pressure is where that cylinder is going to stroke the tensioner back off, and it's going to quit driving that primer.
That was my question. Is that going to is it going to self-correct itself? Like you engage the primer. Is it going to only engage up until a point where it needs to shut itself off, or is it your responsibility to shut it off?
No, you don't have to shut it off, and you won't have to engage it. It'll automatically engage if it has no discharge pressure. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
The primer switch is, so now it has pulled up. It does have 25 pounds of discharge pressure, but you can hear there's air still in the pump. You can push that button and force the primer to run.
Okay.
Right? Even though it's going, hey, I'm happy, I've got enough discharge pressure, I'm good. But you can hear a little bit of cavitation in the pump. The operator can push and hold that button and cause the primer to run and finish evacuating that air.
So does that mean it auto primes, that we would only engage that if we heard this gurgling?
Yeah, more than likely. Yeah, it's using the primer button is not something that you're probably going to do very often.
Okay.
Interesting. So if we're not getting a draft, it's probably got something to do with our setup, not.
Correct.
Okay.
More than likely, it's a valve that's left open.
Yeah. As is common.
Okay.
Yeah.
A drain or a valve.
But what you'll see
Well,
if you're operating out of
These little piston pumps will overcome even an open drain.
Wow.
And once it gets pressure, you'll see it running on the ground and be like, huh, what's that? And then go, oh yeah, I gotta close this drain. But these little piston pumps, they are great. They'll overcome most open drains.
It's opposite to our other trucks that just will not put a draft.
No.
If anything is open at all. Yeah.
They'll let you go till you destroy a primer pump.
Yeah.
Next in line is the high pressure pump, which we talked about, the purple switch. That's what's going to move that transfer valve.
Can you turn that on before the pump itself, or only?
Yeah.
Does it make a difference? Does it cause any issues if you do the sequence one
No.
way or the other?
No. Pump doesn't care. And like I said, it's best practice that once you put it in gear, if you're going to use the high pressure side of the pump, go ahead and put it in high pressure. But it's not the end of the world. Let's say somebody has stretched a hand line out for direct suppression, and the pump operator decides he wants to wet down this barn or this tree or whatever. You can be at 100, 150 pounds on that line and still put that high pressure pump in gear.
So it doesn't care at what RPM you are.
That's correct.
Okay.
So it'll do both at the same time?
Yeah. Yeah. And the next one over is the, I'm so used to looking at the symbols, I got to read the freaking buttons now.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah, is the tank fill recirculate. So we talked about that. That's 1.5 inch air operated valve. There is no throttling that valve. It's full open or full close. Drain does exactly what it says it will do. It'll open the drain on the pump. There's drains on both sides. There's drains on the high pressure volute and there's drains on the normal pressure volute. So both those drains will open.
Just for the pump drain.
Just for the pump drain. Yep. There's an air blowout. The air blowout takes air from the chassis air tanks, not from the compressor air foam. Takes air from the chassis air tanks and puts it into the discharge manifold of the pump. So you can use that to blow out hose lines that you've stretched off, right? And then if you want to blow out the high pressure side, which is actually a very good use of that system, because everything inside this pump, when you close that door and you've got the heater on, everything's going to stay warm and you're going to be freeze protected. But if you flood that high pressure manifold, that forward manifold, all that's under the truck. So that's exposed. So if you've used a booster line for a quick knockdown in the wintertime, and you want to clear that manifold so that you don't break anything, you just open the high pressure side of the pump and use the air blowout.
And then open the valve
And then open the valve.
on the hose reel.
Open whatever discharge you use.
Yeah. Same with the turret,
Open
right?
them all just in case.
Yeah.
And that's another scenario where you may want to use the pressure governor as an engine control, as a throttle to increase engine speed.
Yeah.
Because,
That air.
yeah, the compressor works better.
Would you say it's best to do one after the other instead of all at once? Because I tried it the other day.
You want to
when-
do one,
Yeah.
let it blow out, then close it, open the next one, let it blow out.
Let it build air
close it.
again.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because if you open them all, you're not going to get enough pressure to blow
Right.
out everything, and you're going to drain the air tanks rather quickly.
But I think it is, my personal opinion, it is better to start by blowing out the high pressure side. And once you have that done and you close the high pressure valve, then come back, and if you want to force the pump to drain more quickly, charge that discharge manifold.
There's
there,
so much
open your drains.
unprotected distance, right? To the in the wintertime, you got all the lines that are underneath that are not heated.
Mhm.
So just
Yeah, that is the higher risk. Otherwise, you've got the plumbing going to the speed lays and the plumbing going to the front bumper for the normal pressure lines. But if you haven't used any of those lines, they're still dry.
So the only one that you have to go inside for is the ground sweeps if you want to blow those out.
Correct.
Because we only have the switches on the inside. Okay.
And the bumper turret. You would have to open that from inside the cab as well.
Can you?
Huh?
Can you open that from the front manually? Bumper turret?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
No, you can't do it from back here.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. High pressure foam enable. Because these foam injection systems will only operate up to a certain pressure. On the high pressure side of the pump, you can have a pressure that's higher for your water than what that pump will make. So it can't push foam into 500 pounds when the pump is only capable of 400 pounds. So all of your foam injection takes place on the normal pressure side of the pump. So there are two valves that tell the high pressure pump where it's going to get its water, right? There's one coming off of the regular water only manifold, and there's one coming off of the foam solution manifold. And this high pressure foam switch toggles between the two. So if you've turned your foam system on and you don't get foam out your high pressure resources, it's because you have not toggled those switches.
We did the other day. Who was that with? John? Was it us?
But we had high pressure foam on. And
Yeah, we had it on and we pushed the
And it wouldn't,
button inside and we didn't get any.
It wasn't happening. We couldn't get foam to come through when the high pressure was activated. So maybe it's what you're saying.
It could be if this was not selected, then it's going to be feeding off of the water side of the manifold.
It was selected. We did definitely.
Then you should have been getting foam.
Yeah.
The only other thing is, sometime with these with the foam probe, there are tolerances for the flow meter that have to be played with. So if we see that indeed that's a problem for what we expect to have as a need, whether it's the spray bars or a booster reel or whatever, we may have to play with that. Because if the flow meter is set where it doesn't measure anything less than 25 gallons a minute, and you're flowing a spray bar that's flowing 10 gallons a minute, you're not ever going to get foam because the foam system doesn't know you're flowing, right? So yeah, we have to play with that tolerance possibly.
We may have had that turret set to 50 ppm.
Yeah. And like I said, that can be overcome just by doing things at the foam control screen to tell it, hey, you know what, I need you to look lower.
Those are edits we can make.
Yeah. But we would make them. If we identify that as a problem, we'll take care of it. But yeah, those are things by just going into the setup for the foam system, you can modify it. It doesn't require any kind of special tools or computers or, yeah.
Very top secret stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's buried or not.
We got an air horn button and then we have some scene light buttons.
The air horn, by the way, it switches to electric when the pressure is in low air.
It actually runs both of them at the same time. It uses the electric horn and the air horn at the same time, because it uses the same signal to run the electric horn as it does to operate the air horn.
But the air horn won't work when the truck is in low pressure, low air. It will
Right.
switch automatically to the electric horn.
Well, what I'm saying is even if it has air, it's running the electric horn and the air horn at the same time.
You just don't hear the electric.
Yeah.
I know,
Air
just
because of the air
configure it
horn.
like that. Because
That's actually closed.
that's actually
Rocket
closed.
Man.
Yeah, they've got that valve canted at 45
That's what it was, yeah.
handle.
So that's what it is, but you won't hear the electric horn when the air horns are going. Because it uses this, like I said, it uses the same signal for the electric horn to activate the air horn.
Okay. You've got an audible alarm here for any of your engine warning, right? So if you get low voltage, high coolant temperature, low oil pressure, any of those things, this thing's going to make really obnoxious noise, and then it's going to display on the screen what your problem is, right? And where you see it most often is low voltage. Somebody will be sitting out here like we're doing right now, talking with the master power on. Eventually, you'll get low voltage, and this thing's going to start alarming.
Which screen is that?
Screen? No, it's this. I was just talking specifically about that.
And it'll show you on the
that little
screen
piezo
too.
alarm. Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yep. It'll tell you what condition is out of what parameter is out of range.
Are the alarms for the calves and the general engine, are they different?
Yes.
Okay.
Here's one for the calves.
It sounds different?
Doesn't sound different, but you just
It just basically
the
tells
source is a different spot.
Yeah. It just tells
Yeah.
you pay attention, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So we did talk about that your compressor is going to be auto-enabled as soon as you put your pump in gear. When you select your pump PTO, it's going to turn on the PTO for the compressor as well. It needs water to be cool. Not only does the pump do that, but your compressor needs it as well. So you don't want to run for any extended period of time without water in your pump, both for the sake of the fire pump itself and for the sake of the compressor. I know, Pete, where is that thing? Okay, right here.
So that's the sink and unload
Yeah.
or fixed?
Yep. And it is best to go ahead and select unload
When you move,
just anytime you're done.
anytime you're done.
Yeah, anytime you're done, start and stop the compressor and unload. Go to auto, which is auto sync, when you're ready to start balancing water discharge pressure with air pressure.
So when you don't use the calf system, keep it in unload.
Keep it unload. That way the compressor's not working and it's not going to generate as much heat.
Okay. And then fixed is used when?
Fixed would be
Just
Constant 150 pounds of air.
so when you use the air outlet
no.
or just for your calves.
There's free calves.
Okay.
Yeah. But that being said, what you've got a front bumper line, and you've got the two. If you wanted to get a lot of air, like a lot more than what the chassis air system will give you, you can do that. You can put it in fixed and then get a cap with an air fitting, you know, and then just screw that on the discharge and open your solenoid valve, and you'll get plenty of air.
Airbags or anything like that, or?
Not currently.
Okay.
Okay. We've got a drain for the Y strainer. All of your drains, whether you use that resource or not, it does not matter. It's going to flood that manifold every time you put water in the pump. That entire foam manifold is going to be flooded. Drain all your lines. Drain your calf's Y strainer. Drain your, where's the foam manifold? Foam manifold drain. There's a check valve on a discharge side injection system. There's a check valve in the manifold that will store pressure, and we can play with that once we put the pump in gear. So that you've shut it off, now you've opened your butterfly valve and you've let the water drain out of the pump. If you were at 200 pounds operating, you've still got 200 pounds of pressure in that manifold. Well, it can be a hazard if somebody were to open a pre-connect or something and be standing in front of it. Open that drain every single time you put the pump in gear and flood the manifold. Open that drain when you're done. It will eventually bleed that pressure back out of there. That check valve is not 100% tight, but it'll hold it for a while. So, good practice. Open all of those types of drains after you've put any water in the pump. There's a regulator. I don't know what it's regulated for, but there's a regulator for this outlet. And like I said, I don't know if it was specified for a specific pressure or what they set it for. Pump cooler we talked about. That's like your refill recirc, just a much smaller line. Auxiliary engine cooler we talked about. That's just going to take water and put it through that heat exchanger that's in the it's up in the engine compartment. And the calf's heat exchanger drain, same thing. That's where we'll see people that they'll allow that to freeze, not get the water out of that system. And if you freeze and break that, then you're going to be putting water into your oil for your air compressor, and it's not going to live very long.
Can you blow that out with the air blower too?
No,
Okay.
no.
Can you ID all the drains?
So you've got your manifold drain, and then where else are you?
There's a strainer drain right here
Okay.
for the calf's Y strainer.
All right.
This is the heat exchanger drain. So there's a heat exchanger that's in front of this. Well, you know what? I'd have to look. Typically, it's, oh no, right there it is. It's sitting right up there.
Okay.
So that's what drains the pump discharge water out of that. And to be honest with you, you could, to some extent, maybe force them with the air. But the problem is, anytime you're using that air blowout, you're putting the same amount of pressure on the suction side of the pump as on the discharge side of the pump, right? You're filling that whole system. So there's no reason why that water would want to go, or that air would want to go from one to the other. So it's just use the drain for that system. And then we talked about the calf's heat exchanger drain. Again, don't forget that one, because that's one we see more often when people damage compressors. That's how they damage them, is they freeze that heat exchanger and get water in the compressor oil and it dies.
That's it.
And then the discharge drains, right?
Yeah, they're local right here. And then the ones for anything that's on that forward leg.
Down below for the intake, and then
Yeah. Your speed lays and your front bumper are automatic drains. So they're 15-pound drains. Once you have less than 15 pounds of discharge pressure in that line, that spring valve is going to go open and drain that line. So there's not a manual drain back here for your speed lays, nor your front bumper.
be readjusted after long, the springs?
Nope. Only replaced when they're frozen.
Okay.
Yeah. And 9 times out of 10, when they leak, you'll have, customers will call and say, hey, you get sand in there. It can usually be corrected just by taking something and plunging it while it's got pressure on it, forcing it to flow, and it'll normally clean that seat up.
So,
Okay.
So you were saying before in the classroom, so just as a rule of thumb, when the pump's running, you want to pull these two out, right?
They turn.
They don't.
Oh, they turn.
Yeah.
They turn. Okay,
The
so
quarter
but you want to turn them on.
Yeah.
And then,
Well, this guy here, I don't worry as much about, but still, at least weekly, it should be operated.
yeah, we want to certainly at a truck check every month. We
Yeah.
want to, and then when after using the pump, we just want to drain everything.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's true of any pump that you have that has a mechanical seal. Manufacturers, all the pump manufacturers recommend that you drain those pumps. Don't leave water in them. Used to with the old packed pumps, they didn't care. But with mechanical seals, those things are a little more fickle. If you're driving down the road with water in your pump, because there's no pressure on that pump, the mechanical seal is just spring tension, but it'll vibrate. And if you've got crap in your water, any kind of sand or any kind of deposits that are floating around inside your pump, it'll end up inside that mechanical seal, and then that mechanical seal will start leaking. And it's not broken, but they're really, really tough to fix once they're leaking. Yeah.
We talk about if you're running foam to run clear water, flush everything out.
Yeah. So foam system, I know you guys have Foam Pros, so you're familiar with them. It's basically on off, and then you can select what you're looking at. There's a little LED that goes from flow to your admix ratio to how much foam have I used, how much water have I flowed. All that stuff is available. And then if you want to change your admix ratio, once you select that PA, hey, I'm looking at what I'm doing, I can go from 0.5% to 0.9% or down to 0.3%, whatever. And I don't know where this one's configured. Again, that's configurable, so you can set your default. Huh?
0.5.
It's at 0.5. So, maybe for compressed air foam operations, I don't know what you guys are going to call for, but most of the time, compressed air foam customers want an admix ratio of about 0.3% as opposed to 0.5%.
So can you repeat that? So you were just talking about how to flush your foam line?
Yeah, just shut your foam pump off
Yeah.
and continue to flow whatever line was using foam.
And
Until you have
so
clear
that
water.
should be done after every time foam is employed, right? Just to keep the lines from getting caked or whatever.
Correct.
Basically the same we do with the other trucks too.
Yeah.
Yeah, correct.
So that's a lot easier. That's a lot easier procedure than with the other trucks.
They're about the same.
About the same.
Yeah, just flow it till it's clear water, not making bubbles anymore.
Especially important if you're drafting from a cistern, so that you don't end up backing any of that back into the cistern.
Mm-hmm. And really, like I said, more often than not, when we see foam manifesting in a water tank with a discharge side injection system, it's because they've run a line long enough to have foam solution in that manifold, and then they've shut down that line and then continue to run the pump. There is a check valve that keeps that just from free flowing back in, but everything in there is moving and shaking when the pump's running, and that foam solution is going, some of that foam solution is going to migrate back over to the other side of the pump, and then it's instantly going to be found in your water tank.
And you'll get it a lot if people are hammering the valves open and closed. It doesn't give that check valve time to close, and when that hammer pushes the water backwards, so it's going to put it back into the clear water side.
I think we tell everybody, everything that's open and closed, we do very slowly.
Never hammer.
That's a good rule, for sure. All right, so whenever you start stationary pump operations, you can do it entirely from the back of the truck. You don't have to put the pumping gear in the cab and then go to put your transmission in range as you used to have to. It is not a driveline driven pump. It is an engine driven PTO that's transmission mounted, that's bringing your energy back here. So you can just come back here, open your tank to pump and push start, and your PTO is gonna, your clutch pack's gonna lock up in your PTO and you're gonna be driving your water pump. Same thing with stop. If you've stopped flowing water, instead of worrying about cooling your pump, just stop your pump if nobody's using it. And then when you need water again, put your pump back in gear. It's not like it's a hassle having to go back into the cab and change range and shift pumps. You can just push these buttons as often as you want. It is interlocked to not allow you to engage the pump above 900 RPM.
We only do it at idle.
Yeah, that is the best rule. But it is interlocked that if you are more than 900 RPM, it's not going to let you engage the pump.
High, are you idle or high idle for the pump?
We only engage any PTO on any of the trucks when it's at idle. Same with the generator on our one, the pump, the air compressor, all that, and then the same one here. So it allows you to go up to 900 RPM, right? But let's just keep it at idle as a general rule.
It is a good rule. Just like I said, with moving into high pressure, it's the best rule to get all that stuff pre-configured before you start.
Yeah.
But oftentimes, if you've got an exposure protection that you're going to have to maintain, and you're otherwise deadheading that high pressure side, you're not going to be letting that thing just deadhead. So you'll be taking the high pressure in and out during that operation. That's okay. But as a general rule of thumb, doing everything at idle is best.
Raj, your question is, we have low and high idle on this, right?
Yeah.
So would on the
Right? So if you set the park brake, it's going to take the transmission out of range. So one of the mistakes that we see made by fire departments when they're first moving into one of these newer transmissions is they will get in there, they'll set the park brake, they'll look and they'll see it says neutral, but they won't have actually selected neutral. And then they'll come back here, put pumping gear, and try to get the throttle to work. And the throttle will not work because you've never selected neutral. All right? It is a good practice. You get on scene, set your maxi, push neutral on the transmission. Not only is it flashing neutral at you, it should say neutral, neutral, that you've also asked for neutral. Because that's going to satisfy the interlock to allow you to do stationary pumping. So now when you come back here and you open your tank to pump and you put your pumping gear, this is going to be a pressure governor. It starts like most pressure governors. Well, not like most. It used to be like most. Now it's probably half of them. It defaults to throttle. So it defaults to RPM. So it's just controlling the fuel rate, effectively, is what it's doing. To make it go into pressure where it's doing its job as a pressure governor, you just push the button. Okay? There's some LED lights around here. When you push the button, you're going to see the color of the LED lights change. That means, hey, I'm doing my job as a pressure governor. Yeah, goes from white to blue.
I apologize for being repetitive, but so is there a PTO switch in the cab?
Yes.
Okay, so you go in neutral, you put the PTO on, and then the engine's not going to move.
Correct.
Okay.
But again, if you are planning on doing stationary pumping,
Yeah.
I would not worry about putting the pumping gear from the cab. Just set your maxi, select neutral, come out here, put your pumping gear from here. That way, you're not sitting for any length of time just heating things up because you got out of the truck and you started doing something else before you came back here.
Okay.
Just
And
put this thing
if
in gear
I'm
when you're
not-
ready to use it.
If the pump's engaged and I'm not filling water, is like by using this pump cooler, this is going to give the pump enough water to not burn up.
It depends. At idle, yes.
Yeah.
But if you're standing on 200 pounds of engine pressure, then it's not going to move enough to keep you cool. It'll help. It'll extend the time that it takes to get hot, but it will still get hot.
Will the tank and pump come on automatically, or do I need to engage that?
The refill recirc?
Yeah.
No, it will not come on automatically. There are thermal relief valves on this pump, though. There's, just as with the drains, there's one on the high pressure volute, there's one on the normal pressure volute. Those things will begin opening at about 140 degrees. They'll be full open by 160 degrees. And you know, even though you're not supposed to have steam at 140 degrees, I guarantee you when that thermal relief valve opens, you'll have hot water and steam. So you will know that you've made a mistake. And where, again, we see that mistake most often is somebody showed up on scene and they needed to protect an exposure while they were stretching a hose line. And they put in high pressure and they use the booster reel to coat something with foam. Then they come back here and start pumping operations and they forget they're in high pressure. So what will happen is the high pressure side of the pump, it's no longer flowing, it's gonna get hot and it's gonna open and vent, and that's gonna be your reminder, oh shit, yeah, I need to take it out of high pressure. There's really not a lot,
Don't say it. Don't even say it.
Keep it in.
Yeah. At risk of offending you, there's really not a lot you can do wrong.
Oh boy.
It's
Famous last words.
the doggone
I know.
these pumps and these
This is the fire
applications.
service, don't say
Yeah,
that.
these,
You're gonna prove you wrong on that statement
it's
or not.
firefighter resistant. It's not firefighter proof. There's no such thing as firefighter proof.
The other department down here in Boulder that has one of these, what they have learned is do not leave the refill recirculate line full open when you're doing pump and roll, because it will heat that water up and it gets hot quick.
The entire booster tank.
Yes.
I mean, when you keep it closed.
I'm sorry?
When you keep the line closed.
Like if,
No,
yeah,
keep
keep
it
the
open.
refill recirculate line closed when you're doing pump and roll, and just let the water come out of your pump and roll operations, whether it's a turret or whatever.
Yeah.
Because if you're running the high pressure system and the normal pressure is just recirculating into the pump, you're flowing a whole bunch of water hundreds and hundreds of times, and that water's going to heat up just like that. And their complaint was, well, the water gets hot. Well, yeah.
Close
you
your
just
refill recirc valve.
made it go in a circle 1,000 times. It's going to heat up.
Say that you keep a pump cooling
I would
valve just open all the time.
Yeah, that's, well, not all the time, because like I said, the one time that it breaks and you need to close it, it won't close. But it's a good practice. It's a good practice. Yeah, you can use it every time. That's fine. But also do close it when you're done.
What is the other department here that has one?
Boulder Roll.
Boulder roll. Yeah.
So
And Hygiene has one.
Hygiene.
Mountain View has 3.
But on the flip side, it's good to remember that you can do that to warm up the water if we have to do a hazmat decontamination.
Yeah.
People will appreciate that.
But yeah, if you're just doing pump and roll, just open the pump cooling lines and run your high pressure side and let it be.
It's going to decontaminate.
what is the point control the recirc though?
Sounds like
It's
we gotta
either
raise it.
it's either open or closed.
The
Is that right?
recirculate
The big valve, the inch and a
Fill.
half valve,
Yeah.
is an air valve. This guy here, he can be.
Or if you're filling up from a
Okay, so
hydrant or
you
something, and you
can
just want to fill
control
into the
that.
tank.
Yes.
Okay, but the
drafting
recirc is
filling.
just going to be
Correct.
on or off.
Oh, the tank
It's going to be fully open. or closed.
Correct.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
we're really not using it for research, we're using it for
Right.
That is
You can
accurate.
actually control. Then you can control some pressure here.
Yeah, like I said, this
little
is such,
bit. I mean,
it's,
it's
it's
not-
yeah, it's
a little bit.
extremely nominal, but yes.
Okay.
And we'll hit these lights real quick. You do have 2 lights back here. I kind of talked about some of the effects of making mistakes in the cab, not selecting neutral. You'll see that back here. If you've put your PTO in gear and you come back here and you've got pump engaged, but you don't have throttle ready, that's telling you that this governor is not going to do its job. And 9 times out of 10, that's because either you didn't set the park brake or you didn't select neutral to transmission. And then this little screen here, I'm not going to talk a lot about it. Watrous will be coming out to do compressed air foam operations training. We'll tell you how to use the compressed air foam system, but that's not what we do. We don't train you on the tactics and exactly what you're supposed to do with compressed air foam. So they'll spend more time on that. For you guys, there's probably no likelihood, unless you were to have an oil leak, or if you lost the ability to cool the compressor, then you would want to take it out of gear. Otherwise, if you're just in standby, that thing can run all day long. It's an industrial compressor. It does not care. So it does not hurt just to let it run. A couple of little idiosyncrasies associated with this are there's a check valve in the top of the discharge manifold that's then tied to an air line that goes back up. There's a solenoid bank. There's a bank of solenoid valves up here on the upper left side. Those are all of the air valves that the pump uses for different things, to tell the primer to engage, to open and close, refill, recirc, to change, from high pressure to normal pressure. Well, your pump blowout is plumbed out of that manifold, one of those solenoid valves, into the top of the pump. So when you look right behind this gauge, you'll see this brass piece about this long. And what that is a check valve. That check valve is to allow the air to get into the pump, but not the water to get out. All right. We don't have a real lot of problems with those things, but over time, there is some likelihood that check valve fails. Things break.
Check valve.
Yep. So if you're ever standing in here doing pumping operations and you've got water coming out of your air manifold, that's your problem.
Okay.
Yep. So that is what that valve is, and that's the valve that would need to be replaced. Shouldn't be no problem.
That's when we call Brendan.
Yep. Come fix it.
Tonight.
Been there, done that.
I don't.
We're gonna go over some maintenance items on this. I know we're gonna still work on primer and pump oil, but just general maintenance for the pump.
There really isn't any.
The only one that I can think of is the Kunkel valve for the high pressure side, the relief valve. There's, I gotta see if I can find it now.
And the pump oil is every 100 hours, and the compressor oil is every 50. Right?
The primer is every 50. The pump is every 100.
Right.
The compressor is a separate set of instructions, and I don't know off the top of my head.
I think it's 100.
It's 100.
So, back behind here is the main discharge relief valve. This Kunkel valve, where my finger is called a Kunkel valve. That's the relief valve for the high pressure side. Every once in a while, I'm not saying every time you use it, but go ahead and get into the high pressure side and open that up and get that Kunkel valve to open and flush it out, because a lot of people don't operate that Kunkel valve, and then it sticks, and then when they do open, it sticks open and it's open. And then you've lost the high pressure ability.
We'll play with that today. Those are typically set at the factory at about 525 pounds is where they start to open. So we'll play with it. We'll run the high pressure side up and we'll see where it starts putting water on the ground. And that's, to Brandon's point, is just push it past that and just get it open and get it flowing. And that'll help prevent, again, getting crap in there and causing it to leak.
Or getting stuck and then cramming open.
Okay, you guys have compressed air foam on other trucks, right? Okay, so I'm not going to spend a real lot of time, but it is, air goes into water when there is foam in there to allow it to go into water. If you don't have foam in your, if it's not foam solution, if it's straight water, you're going to get that whole bucking hose line thing, right? So it is best practice to establish a flow of foam solution on your hose line before opening your air valve. All right, and that'll prevent that scenario, or at least greatly aid. And then, as Pete had mentioned, these valves are throttleable. These valves are not. Yeah. So as far as your finished foam quality, what you're looking for your wetter foams, open your water valve further. For your drier foams, close your water valve, because your air valve is only on or off. You can't throttle it. And what you'll find is you'll find just a little bit different varying line pressures based on flow. And you'll see through your flow. I mean, once you've set your thing up and you've got your flow meter going here, you'll be able to establish different expectations, different line pressure expectations for desired outcomes. Okay. Cool. Any specific questions on this?
So in the wintertime, let's say that it's 10 degrees outside.
Yes, sir.
And we go to a call with this truck. What precaution? I mean, it sounds like certainly we want to turn the heater on, right?
Yeah, and there's a thermostat as well. I don't know what it's set for, but there's a little Dayton industrial thermostat in there, and you can set that for 40 degrees or whatever.
Back in there. But
as, I mean, as long as we've done a good job
It's set at 50 right now.
draining before we park the truck,
Yeah.
we should be able to turn that heater on and feel safe being outdoors
Yeah.
in cold temps without having to run pumps or anything like that.
Yeah.
with everything drained and blown out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I said, with the door closed, you'll get back here after having run to the call. Let's say it's cold and the thermostat's set for 50, so you didn't even turn it on, but the thermostat turns it on automatically. You get to the call and you open this door, it's just going to be a bunch of heat spilling out onto you. It's kind of nice.
Oh, so there's a thermostat where it's always going to be at 50 degrees regardless of whether you turn on the heater.
It comes on at 50 degrees.
That's what the thermostat's set for. That switch on your panel here actually turns on a fan.
Well, so does the thermostat. It turns on the fan as well.
Even by itself, even if a firefighter forgot to turn
Correct. And yeah, I recommend actually setting that like at about 40 degrees as opposed to 50, but you can do whatever you want.
How do we adjust it?
There's a knob on it. Takes a screwdriver and turn it.
That's great.
So general procedure in the winter is just keep them drained after you use them.
Yep.
So you put the truck away, ready for winter operation.
Yep. That is again a best practice for sure.
Yeah.
But it does offer some self-protection in that thing is going to come on and it's going to keep that pump compartment warm as long as you've got that door shut. But otherwise, the normal pressure side of the pump is no different than any of your other pumps.
Yep.
And the compressed air foam side is going to be just like your other truck.
And then one kind of, so yeah, obviously you notice our apron goes uphill like this.
Yeah.
So are the drains going to work better in that position or less better?
Depending, the forward drains would work less better,
Okay.
and the aft drains would work better.
So would that cause a problem then if we drained it on the apron, the forward drains? Would it cause water to be in the system?
Not enough to break stuff.
Oh,
Yeah.
But if you're also using the blowout, it'll help.
oh, I see. Right. So the blowout should really get everything out regardless of.
You get 85% of it out.
Because the hazard with the automatic drains is those automatic drains, if you're flowing that line and that drain has gone closed, it will freeze closed. So then it's not going to open. So
Would you agree that?
Say that again. The hazard is.
the automatic drains will freeze. So if you've been doing pumping operations off of the front bumper or off of the speed lays, and then you shut down, there's some likelihood that the automatic drain may have frozen. So it will not open. So at that point in time, using the air blowout as the resource to clear that line is well advised.
And that's the same. So if I want to drain this guy and blow it out, so I did it the other day. I opened this one first, kept this closed, the actual drain closed, blew it out this way, then I put the cap back on, then I opened this and blew out, and then I blow out the drain itself. Yeah. Okay.
By just playing, like you said, with the valve positions and whether you're in high pressure or not, you can specifically address clearing any individual resource.
Otherwise, like Brandon earlier said, you just don't have enough pressure to really blow out.
Yep.
One at a time.
Something else we talked about earlier, for like a quick attack on a booster line, you may use your cruise controls as your high idle to boost line pressure for your booster line.
When you're stationary.
Yep. Same thing for your using the air blowout. If you can make the engine turn at 12, 13, 1400 RPM, it's going to make a lot more air than it is at 700 RPM.
Okay.
So you'll be able to step through those things and rebuild air. Well, I usually build to about 50 or 60 pounds of air because you'll see it right on your discharge edge. You'll see how much air is in there. But build to about 50 or 60, and that's usually enough to clear whatever resource you're clearing. I think they're trying to find the leak.
The drain. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because as you know, we've had it the other day that leaking, draining into the cabin.
Yeah.
Because you always have water spilling here, and right now for the way, for it to drain is into the cabinet.
Just tilt the truck this way.
Well, it's both cabinets.
Yes. I like your thinking, man.
We are in the mountains, so
Park it
we have the
downhill.
option.
That'll help.
Pretty easy.
That'll help. All right. Any other specific questions about the pump itself?
What's the big turning valve?
Yeah, that thing.
There's a butterfly valve in the suction.
Okay.
So this would be, if were you to bring in a pressurized resource and pressurized supply and want to use compressed air foam, that would be the scenario where you would open the auto tank fill and leave this valve closed.
Okay.
Whereas if you're not using compressed air foam, it's just a surround and around operation, then you would open this and supply directly to the pump.
Okay.
Yeah.
Basically your intake valve.
Yeah. And all of that's on common manifolding, so there's a relief valve here for the intake side of the pump to protect against any sort of a surge in supply pressure. But additionally, if you're tied in here and you're outboard this valve, there's a relief valve.
Somewhere back there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there it is. I see it. It tees off the bottom and runs right
Oh
over
yeah,
there.
I see it.
Yeah.
It's just back. But
Yep.
This one is forward. That one is back.
Yep. And that will open if you get. Usually those are factory set at about 150 pounds.
What's that black digital control on top of that butter? The
Oh, that's John's microphone.
Somebody's microphone. Yeah.
That looks new.
I'm not going to be able to help you with that one.
Who saw that?
right there.
Okay, I think that's good. By the way, our regular airlines don't fit that outlet.
I think that they put a hydraulic. That's a hydraulic.
Is it? Yeah, is
That's
it?
not an air, that's not a pneumatic outlet.
That came with your truck.
Wait, but it doesn't fit standard air outlets or air plugs.
No, it does not.
Oh, it's a special proprietary.
Yeah,
Oh,
Well, in your box of stuff, you should have got a fitting that fits in this.
Okay.
That's what that's for. But if you want to change this, we can change
Yeah,
this
it's not a
fitting.
problem to
We'll
change.
probably change it to a standard
Yeah,
plug so we can.
it's just the same thing. You just got to take this off
Yeah.
and screw a new one on.
Can you talk over so it's preset at 100 psi, right?
Yes.
The governor?
Yes.
For calves, it should be at 100 psi.
Yeah. And then, so when you hit the preset button, it goes to 100. How do we change that? Was it push the button, hold
To
it?
go up, you want to change the preset?
Yeah.
I'll have to.
They all vary a little bit. The governors all vary a little bit. This one here, you push and hold the preset
Yeah.
until it's flashing at you,
Blinks and then you rotate it
and
up
then
to
turn
where
the
you
knob
want.
to the pressure you want.
So fair enough.
Whenever you get to the desired discharge pressure, then you let it go, and that'll reset the preset.
So is this for a piss pack?
That's for a piss pack.
And does the pump have to be running, or can
Negative.
you actually fill water out of that just when it's?
Yeah.
Would it push water right now?
Yes.
Okay, that's awesome.
We added that as an option.
That's great. So you know a piss pack. So that's a fill right now.
Oh, okay. Just a grab feed that.
Cool.
So I assume we're going to flow water. Yes. No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's play with it. That way, also we can show that high pressure relief valve. We can flow whatever resources you guys want to flow, and we can circle back and blow the pump out when we're done.
Okay. Let's go ahead.
All right.
You know what?
Start the truck.
Yeah, one thing that might be interesting.
Wait, I want to see if you know what? I think it's a.
Like what sequence you would go through.
So Floyd, at the end, could you guys go through the sequence of, or through the steps of what to do at the truck check, like for a monthly check? Run the pump.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
like,
Open and close different valves, right? Every valve, as we have on the other trucks, we open and close
Yep.
every valve.
Those are good practices.
Anything else?
Well, I don't know what all you guys require, but I mean,
I think it'd be a good recap at the very end of training. And just like say, okay, on a monthly basis, come to this compact, this is what I'm going to get. Open that, check all the drains.
yep. And all right. I will defer back to Brandon for that, because he'll address more things than just on the fire pump side. Good to go?
Your red eye.
All right. So once he's turned it on, this becomes active. It's going to default to discharge pressure and intake pressure. You can select what you're looking at by using the arrows. So there we're looking at our water tank, our foam tank, and that's a bar graph for discharge pressure. And here we've got engine oil pressure, coolant temperature, and voltage. Here we're going to see pump hours, 19 hours and 24 minutes.
Let's add that.
There's our fuel level. and then back to the discharge pressure. All right. Let's say that we were to be sitting out here without the engine running and had the master power on, and we got all our compartment doors open, and we get to a low voltage scenario. More often than not, that's when we see it, is we're sitting there talking about things when we have the power on, so we have lights and things. When that alarm goes off, it's going to tell you it's low voltage. You push this square button in the middle. That'll make the alarm go away. That's an acknowledgement. So you can make the awful noise quit, because it is an awful noise.
And then you can really drain the batteries.
And then you can really drain the batteries. You can go ahead and go to a
bother
low
you.
crank. We've proven that.
I'm sure everybody has.
So then for stationary pump operations, like I said, from in the cab, you just open your tank to pump and you put the pump in gear, and then select high pressure and choose whatever resource you're going to use, your spray bars or your bumper tray. From back here, again, we're ready for stationary pumping, so our governor will become active. So by opening our tank to pump, now we're flooded with pump, you have to be very open. And then start and stop are for your pump PTO. So you just push start.
Raise your voice a little bit.
Start and stop for the pump PTO. I'll try.
Yes,
And then,
with the engine, it's a little.
yeah, and then so you just push this button. It's going to put the PTO in here. The primer you'll hear run for just a second, but also it's a 5 or 6 piece drive line between that transmission mount of PTO and the pump itself. Each of those joints, although they're brand new U-joints and they're all good, there's an amount of slop in there, so you'll hear it. It is a normal noise. All right, it's not a bad noise. You'll know a bad noise when you hear it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, this is not a bad noise. That is what it sounds like. Primer sounds like. You see the lights are white? That's telling you it's a throttle control. It's an RPM. Okay? So I'm affecting a change to the fuel rate to the engine speed. Okay? I get to a discharge pressure I want. I push it. It's now blue. So now it will throttle up or throttle down to maintain that engine pressure. All right? You can push idle. Yeah. Say again?
Why have you not opened it? Don't need it?
Yeah. I wasn't going to be running long enough to worry about getting anything hot.
Oh, I didn't know you guys were.
No, just, and for some of this operation, I won't open it just because it'll be impossible to build any discharge pressure. It loses a lot of water. We might open that pump cooling line.
That's what he was asking about.
Oh. Yeah, just because I was just starting it to show what it sounded like, and I wasn't worried about each code. Idle, you know, the early days of the pressure governors, it was a problem to hit idle because the engines would crash. That's not a problem anymore. These things all have a soft fall. So at any engine speed, you don't have to worry about dialing your pressure back or dialing your engine speed back. You can hit idle and it's going to be a nice soft fall. It's not going to hammer things.
So when you hit idle, it basically resets that
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And then you hit the primer button when you turn on the pump. You just did that just to show it, but that's not actually necessary to turn on the primer at all.
No,
right?
that is exactly correct. I just did it to make so you guys would recognize that noise.
Oh, actually.
Yeah, that's what the primer sounds like. Like I said, it's not the roar of the motor with our rotary thing.
And remind us when. So the only time you're going to press that primer button is if you hear cavitation and then.
Correct. Correct. 9 times out of 10, that's the only time you're going to need it.
Okay.
It's an auto primer. It automatically engages, and once it gets,
Yep. So like a thing that's fun to play with to demonstrate the performance of that thing is when you're doing, you know, porta tank operations, lift that hose out of there, let it pick up air, and it's a fraction of a second before that primer has engaged. When you drop the hose back in the water and pick the water back up. Automatically. Yep. So, you know, because you'll have a tender come in and dump, and when he dumps, he might float the strainer or float the hose, and if he does, then all of a sudden you've got air. If you're not standing right here on a regular truck, you're going to have to push and hold the primer button, this thing's just going to pick it back up. Yep.
It's kind of like self-driving cars now, people are losing their perishable skills because they're relying on the self-driving, if they are.
Yep.
And it's kind of like this, like I don't have to prime, and then I get over on the 01, I'm a new firefighter, I don't have to prime, you know, we gotta remember.
Something tells me Michael's not letting the new firefighters touch this truck.
Good point.
Yeah.
Okay, something further on the pressure governor is if you affect the change to your desired discharge pressure, it automatically puts it back in throttle. So anytime I change it, right, I'm in pump. I've asked for 140 pounds. Let's say, okay, I want 125 instead. I dial it back to 125, the lights are white again. As soon as I change it, it puts it back in throttle. So I get to where I want. And then push it, and now it's done its governor thing again. And again, idle. It's got that nice soft fall. Okay. The high pressure side of the pump. We talked about there's our discharge pressure gauge for the high pressure side of the pump. Is that booster real valve closed just in case?
On the right side,
That's exciting when you open one of those open.
Yeah, it should now.
We have that added, you know? We have that added, yeah.
What's that?
The booster wheel valve on that side. Can we do something with that?
It's standard. We just
We said we are keeping the nozzle on it.
Yeah, the thing about it is having the nozzle on it, or making sure that valve is closed.
So I don't like these.
No, it'll be useless with the vibration anyway.
Alright, so again, like I said, you can expect to see about 3.5 times the normal pressure side on the high pressure side of the pump. So if we're looking at about 40 pounds, we would expect to see 140 pounds probably. 150 high pressure. We're down to 110. Which, we're back down to 23 on the normal pressure side. We moved a little water out of there. Alright, here's some stuff to go up. We got air in the pump. That's what we're doing. Yeah. Did you take pump the open? Second. Did you take pump the open? Well. Yeah. There you go. Okay. That'll help get rid of it. Yeah. Then we can go close again so we can go pressure. It'll take it a while to get it all pushed out through there.
Well, wouldn't you want to keep the tank pump open right now?
Well, depends on how long we're going to be doing it. Okay. I'm not going to do it long enough to get hot on this. So right now, we got that open equipment up here. So 75, 250, 260.
Every general rule to show all firefighters to keep the tank pump open. Let's just do it the way we normally, yeah. Because without it open, what are we moving? Just the water in the pump.
Just in the pump, right? Only, right?
So you cannot do that long. So as a general rule, just like with the other trucks, we keep that tank pump open.
More volume forward.
Reset, we talked about. 100 pounds on the normal pressure side, about 300 on the high pressure side.
One thing I notice is when you turn on the pump, because there's so many different parts to the PTO, or what's being powered by the PTO, is just wait 10 seconds for it to come on.
Yeah, the compressor, it took a little while to work out.
Yeah. Because I've had that before where just like you did a minute ago, where I start moving water and increasing idle on the RPM, and then there's something like this coming on, and that was probably the compressor.
Yep. Let me hit that. So there's a timer for that PTO. It's till the pump turns on.
So does it move?
Say that again.
The high pressure will hold pressure whatever you shut it off at. So you need to make sure that you bleed the high pressure side down.
Like right now, if you wanted to take some pressure off of it, if I open a high pressure now and we're not turning, it'll let that pressure back off. Right? It's the same thing like right now. If we open the foam manifold, you hear that little pressure release?
Could you do that again? Sorry, I wasn't tilted down to that.
And really sell it this time.
All right, I'm trying to make something good for you guys.
I appreciate it, Director.
Yes.
Yeah. That's your foam manifold drain, and then you've got the Y strainer valve. That is what filters crap out of the water stream that's being used to cool the compressor. So that's will also trap pressure, but more importantly, it holds water. And then if you don't drain that, it will freeze and break that, and then before long you'll have
Is it actually better?
water in your compressor.
Is there I would think there's a downside to turning it up on and off repeatedly like that.
There really is not. That PTO is always being driven, right? All you're doing is opening and closing a clutch pack.
Okay, so you're better off just shutting it down than you are risking getting your recirculation right.
Yeah, which is what I was saying earlier. It's with it being so convenient, it doesn't involve going in and out of the cab and putting the transmission in and out of range. If you've stopped flowing water, everybody's got hose lines down and they're doing something else as a part of overhaul, you don't need to let this thing just stand and hammer. You can just push stop, take it out of gear.
But how quickly can you put the preset on after you start the pump?
You can do it right away, but what we've just seen is there's a timer for that air compressor. So let that thing engage before you run your engine speed up.
So to bleed the high pressure line, you just push that high pressure button.
Yeah.
Just hold it.
Because there are no drains on the high pressure manifold.
That's the only way to drain it.
The only way to let the pressure off is to do that, and then the only way to drain it is to use the air blowout.
Just to do it.
Use the air blowout.
That's not funny. I've checked it every 3 minutes. Quick question. So many forgiveness with this thing. What are the top 3 ways we can fuck up the pump or the truck? Like, in other words, what you've seen and what's something that we know on 01 there's some major problems if we do certain things. What are the 3 possible ways that we could mess something up?
Like I said, the most common thing that we see, the pump does protect itself to a large extent with thermal relief valves. But if you have it in high pressure and you're not using any high pressure resource, you are going to heat up that high pressure side of the pump. And the high pressure side of the pump heats up, of course, there's 4 impellers, so there's 4 times as much heat being generated. It heats up a lot faster than the normal pressure side. It's more sensitive to it. That's where you're going to find your thermal relief valve opening and go, oh man, I forgot to take it out of high pressure. All right. Then really about the only other things are things that are the same problem with every other pump. If you're pumping rocks or large pieces of flat steel, it's very bad. Watch where you're getting your water, because that'll damage the pump. This pump is way more efficient and way more forgiving than most domestic pumps. Most domestic in-suction pumps have a single water stripper, and even the full-bodied pumps typically only have 2 water strippers. They've got one at the top and one at the bottom. These are circumferential strippers, so there's water strippers all the way around that case. Consequently, it's more forgiving in the tolerances. It's got larger tolerances, so it will pass more crap than a domestic pump will. So it is more forgiving, but you still... We had a Gelton picked up a piece of flat steel, and we never did find the piece of steel because it was out by the time we got to it. But as that went through the veins of the impeller, it got wedged in a vein in the impeller and then got into the strippers, and it took everything out all the way around. And suddenly when we went to a pump test, it would only pump about 800 gallons a minute. Couldn't figure out why.
We've had rocks.
Yeah, rocks are bad. You get enough rocks stuck in the veins of the impeller, and you're going to see your performance degrade. And the downside is yeah, sure, you can take a scope and you can go through the cut waters and you can find the impeller that has the vein that has that rock in it, but there ain't no good way to get it out except take that pump apart.
Well, Brendan.
Yeah, and then Brendan, anything you want to touch on? I just really touched on 2.
the other thing, in like Floyd was saying, the volume side has rope packing in it. The high pressure side has that mechanical seal, and if you continuously let that high pressure side get hot and it opens and closes that thermal relief valve, one of those times it's going to break that high pressure or that porcelain seal, and then it's going to leak. And I'll tell you what, it's a chore to get from here to the back.
Probably days to get there.
They take one apart in less than a day.
Yeah, we can get it apart in about a day. It's very time consuming and it's a lot. We've actually found that it's easier and faster just to pull the pump out, set it on the bench, and do it all right on the bench. But you know, like I said, it is labor intensive because there's so many pieces to it. You know, like I said, the other thing that I've seen is the Kunkel valve that we talked about on the high pressure side. People don't operate it, and then when it does open, it always sticks open. So it is a very good practice.
That's the valve on the back side, yeah.
Yep, that's
Yeah.
it's this brass Kunkel valve clear back here.
It's right behind the high pressure volute.
It's right there. It's where that clear line comes off. That's the high pressure relief valve.
So that wasn't left open.
When you open it, it will open by itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we can start the pump back up here in a minute and I'll show you.
Yes, it is. There's something else I've just noticed that probably is worth mentioning while we're standing here. This is what happened to me earlier. Take the pump in gear, hit stop. It's ordering the tank to pump valve closed. So you need to be aware of that. If you have taken the pump out of gear, when you go to put it back in gear, you need to open the tank to pump valve again.
Which, same with other trucks really too. I mean, they don't do by themselves, but you should check.
Yeah.
So, Michael, the SFP is always have the tank.
For us, yeah.
I was going to run that Kunkel valve.
That's right, we were going to show that open.
You can't blow it up that way. That's good.
Yeah. It really is. It is very firefighter resistant application.
So if we don't like somebody, we have them do an underbody check while we're using it.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Good.
That or have them clear the nozzle on the bumper turret. That's a hoot too.
Or that thermal, right?
Yeah.
So when you had that on with the high pressure pump and then tank the pump open and the recirc closed.
Yeah,
It didn't move water.
I just had the pump cooling line open.
Yeah.
And if you just get it till it opens and dumps that out, you'll hear it. I mean, it went all the way up to like 525, and then it went past and then popped back open.
So once a month at every truck check, we should do that.
Yeah, and that was something they asked before we move on to other things, Brandon. They'd asked specifically to identify what you would recommend for standard monthly truck
Yeah,
check
I got
procedures.
the chief's list. I'm gonna go through it.
Okay.
I'll go through that, and we'll address those issues. But literally, those are the big things. Open and close the valves. Even this valve, if you guys don't operate this valve very often, it will stick, and it just.
We do it monthly where every valve gets opened all the way and closed.
Yeah. So that's about all I can really think about. Like I said, it's just that Kunkel valve is the big thing that I see fail all the time. This doesn't have the fix system in it, so we don't have to worry about that. And make sure that you flush the foam out of the system. That's the other thing. The foam gets in there and gets everything sticky.
Aside from the drain, you mean the discharge?
Yeah. Once you're flowing foam, make sure you flush it out and get all the foam cleaned out of it. Because the foam will stick in these back actuated valves. It just gets gummy in there.
I guess that's kind of a disadvantage of blowing water out, because once it's just foam in there and no water, that's when it gets gunky and
Yeah.
we do the same with the other trucks.
But then we just do foam, water, blowout, right? If we do it in that sequence, doesn't that?
Foam, yeah, you turn off the foam, you
Flow
move
water.
water, you flow water.
Then blow out.
Yep.
I think what we saw the other day too on the phone was you really need to flow water only a good bit longer than you feel like the foam's all the way out. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. When you stop seeing foam, don't just shut it off immediately. Just wait another, 30 seconds. Foam is sufficient that way. One thing we discovered is when you have that step out and you have a 6-inch online connected to the station, you're not using that cabinet. you know? Yeah.
It's a lot of hose.
What's that, is it NPF, that red valve there between the two?
Oh, this is it's just a label for the factory. It's for the foam. It's a normal pressure and high pressure foam valves. It's what activates for the foam injection. That's all it was.
so this drain is the only drain that's in a different position. Is this in this position on purpose?
Well, it's just because it's sideways.
Yeah.
It's
just how it's oh, I got you. Okay, so that's just.
And this only drains
just
this side
okay.
of the valve.
All right, it's just because the way it's
positioned.
installed. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
What's in that?
Just some fittings.
It's the engineer's cabinet.
It's one of them, yeah. But
It's
near impossible to use once the 6-inch sits on top of it.
Yeah, you can
pull it out first.
Yeah.
Well, getting the lid open.
Getting
the lid open would be impossible with the hose on.
Yeah.
Are these just for kind of butterflying hose when you're on sync? Okay.
And what's the backpack fill valve down there?
It's piss packs.
Isn't that cool? Isn't that amazing? It's genius.
That was an option. Can we have that, please?
What's that?
Jack, can we have that, please? Remember the conversation about the piss?
And you don't even have to have the pump
backpack
on
valve
for that to fill.
We had that conversation. Yeah.
And it's
If you open that little nozzle, water will flow out, right?
we have a little connector for it. It's actually in the cabinet.
Does the pump even have to be on for that to flow? Because the gravity will feed it, right?
Yeah, there we go. Water on your nice boots. There's food.
Alright, I'm cutting the camera.
Okay, so once you get your truck outside, go ahead, get it set, start your pump, take the pump, go ahead and recirculate the water by opening your pump cooling, adjust your pressure, make sure that your preset works, make sure your idle works, make sure your governor works, engage your high pressure, get it up, run it until the kunkel valve opens and discharges. Also down here in the very back are these thermal relief valves right here. There's a handle on the end. If you can pull those out, and that just flushes the stuff. There's one here, and the other one is just a little further back, right here. Just pull the ends, open those up, and let them flush. Just to keep everything clean. Once you get done running your pump, go ahead, shut everything down, open your caps wide strainer in the full manifold drain, close your pump cooling valve, drain your heat exchanger, open your pump drain, which is there, and you can use your air blowout to help push the air out.
It'll get small.
I'm sorry?
It's amazing how much more you get with the air blowout.
Yeah.
You know, it looks like it's stopping until with the air blowout.
Is there a valve open or something besides the?
I have all the drains open.
That's a lot of water.
Well, it's a lot considering it stops until
But you wait until you're done. I mean, until it's done.
Yeah. Once you're done, you get everything blown out, then you just close all your valves back up.
And then what about the front valves?
So if you ran the high pressure system, you want to open the high pressure, make sure all your other valves are closed, then use your air blowout. Hey, thanks.
You would have to have the front open, right?
Those nozzles open.
Well, what I'm going to do is build air pressure, and then you can go to the cab and open each drain or each discharge, such as a bumper turret, how to blow that out, open the ground sweeps, how to blow those out, and then you can also come over to the booster reel.
There's also another discharge under here, isn't there, for the reel?
Reel?
But,
That's basically that's using the air to blow out the entire hose. We got to do that every time.
in the winter, probably.
Maybe.
And if we use foam, we have to do it every time, and in the winter, or possible freezing.
If you use foam, you want to flush the system until it's clean water. And now that the booster reel's drained out, how much air pressure's left in there?
The actual
Now that there's still air pressure in there, point the camera away from people, or the monitor away from people.
Cool.
Squeeze the trigger. Let it blow the high pressure out.
Did you turn the high pressure valve on in here too?
No, it's the same as back there.
Same as back there.
And then operate your ground sweeps.
Yep.
That would be the left side, be the right side.
Even though we didn't use them, they still could have some water in there.
Yep. And then once they're blown out, you're done.
That's it. Awesome.